Okay, well, it appears this is live. Can somebody confirm in chat? This is the first time we did this. I think I figured it all out. Am I audible? Yeah, it's gonna be one big happy fucking experiment. And we'll see how this goes. Good PB. Man, you're one of our most enthusiastic fans. It's interesting how quick you are to respond every time. I'm sorry for messing around with the screen, by the way. Leona walks up next to me with a big proud smile on her face. Yeah, okay, there's a 3-second lag I hear. Okay, that's perfect. That's as good as it gets. Yo, Wesley, awesome to have you here, man. During the stream, during the Twitter Spaces, I can't talk back to you guys. I hope you understand, and I won't be typing all the time because I want to follow the discussion as well. Metacutus, welcome. Yeah, man, welcome. Well, as you can hear, my voice is still shit. Let's see. Busy, busy, busy. It says we are live. What am I missing? Oh, yeah, that's smart, Jasper. Nice. Hey, Bill Tippett. Trying to figure out. Apparently we are live, but I'm not in yet. I still see, as you can see, the Quant Community Q&A thing. Okay, I'm feeling such a fucking boomer right now. Ah, okay. It was me. Nobody else. I need you. Learning. Nobody else. I need you. Let's see how this works. Nobody it together, ladies and gentlemen. Official Twitter Spaces link. That's a good one. So bad with the speak space, team space, and where to do it. My God, it feels such a treat. Camera's off. If you guys can see my face.
All right.
Awesome.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of their schedules to join us today. I am incredibly excited to be here alongside such a passionate and excited and knowledgeable group here. If you look at it collectively, there's over 10 years of quant and QNT research in the panelist speakers you have here before you. So what we're looking to do is to take some of the biggest questions around some really big ideas in crypto and break them down and walk through them together. We want to make sure that we can make this something that helps you all improve your understanding of what QNT is, of what Quant Network is as an organization, the broader strategy, and then the intricacies involved in those moving pieces. And then when we have that bigger picture, it allows us to step back and then kind of see what's actually going on. Because when we focus only on specific details, especially those that we've maybe been trained to focus on from crypto as a whole, it takes us away from the broader vision that Quant is accomplishing. Because objectively speaking, Quant is a technology company that builds infrastructure and that builds platforms for other companies to build off of. It's not a direct-to-consumer B2C interaction like you normally see in crypto. And because of that, there's nuances in how they operate. There's nuances in the communication. There's just quite a few things that go into understanding the depth of what this actually is and the distinction between what makes Quant Network, the organization, and their products different from what we see in virtually every other example in crypto. So before we get started, I want to take a moment to introduce all of our speakers today. So Greg, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Hungarian. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Q&A. I'm Greg, and I've been in Quant since, sorry, I'm just eating a banana. I'm in Quant since October 2020, and I started creating content in September 2021, about a year later. Just recently started posting on Twitter the last couple months, and it's been really awesome going up and back with you all and sharing information and kind of doing these little treasure hunts and deep dives into all of the speculative and hard evidence that we have out there. And I'm excited to talk about some of the lighter and hard-hitting questions that the community has offered up to us. So yeah, I'll pass it along to Tim.
Oh, hey everyone. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. This is my first ever Twitter space. And, well, if that's the case, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Tim. I'm, well, the person after, behind Quant Updates on Instagram. And also the Quamfy Show on Twitter. And that is our podcast that I make with Jarno. And yeah, it's just such a pleasure to be here and be able to speak to you guys. I'm hoping to at least answer some questions and just offer you an interesting perspective. So it's an honor to be here, and let's see how it goes. Really excited for it.
Dr. Puppers, let's kick it over to you.
Hey everyone. So I'm Dr. Puppers. I've been in Quant a while, I think like 2018. So I've seen the community grow over time, and it's been one hell of a ride. I am one of the admins that runs the Council of Quamf, both the group and the Twitter account. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Quantidian.
Yeah, hopefully everybody can hear me okay. This is the first time I'm using this this mic, but I'm Quantidian. I've been in Quant since 2019, but it wasn't really until 2021 that I started really getting into it and becoming like part of the community. Probably the thing I've contributed most to that is making a bunch of Gilbert GIFs, and I pronounce it GIF, and I don't want to hear about it. But otherwise, I'm just super into being a part of the community. It's a real honor to be here. I think I'm going to be more of a passenger today, but I'll chip in if it feels like it's useful. And yeah, it's a huge honor to be, you know, here, because all of these other folks talking really know their stuff, and I love talking about quant, so I'm looking forward to it.
And last but never least, Jarno.
Yes, am I audible? Good evening, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you are.
Excellent, great. Yeah, I've been messing around with also streaming this simultaneously to the Quamfy show, the YouTube, and first time Twitter Spaces, first time streaming, so it's a little bit of a, well, regular Quamfy show. So yeah, I'm Jarno. I'm together with Tim, host of the Quamfy show, and been in Quant since 2020, creating content, Quantent, ever since, well, what was that? Yeah, last November. Since we started this this big endeavor, and really excited to be here, and curious how tonight will go. Thank you.
Well, thanks to all of you for being here. I really appreciate it so much. My name's Hungarian. I've been with the community for about 2 years now, and I love quant. Simply put, it's absolutely fascinating stuff. You know, I've always kind of been interested in innovation in various forms, and quant kind of embodies all of the things that are most exciting about innovation. You know, the opportunity, of course, that's, you know, I think why a lot of us are here, but beyond that, there's a lot of exciting potential and implications beyond what's happening. And for those of you that have been in like maybe the quant community, or, you know, circles of influence from this community, you've heard of ideas that talk about things like the internet of trust and the internet of value, and some of these larger, almost intangible concepts. What's exciting about that is when we start to look at distributed ledger technology as a whole, what we're seeing is paradigm shifts in how humans interact with each other. We're seeing a fundamental shift in how we're able to interact with value, how we are able to organize ourselves as a species, how like virtually everything in our modern landscape is a product of the inability to trust someone you don't know. And now that we have this, really this evolution in human interaction, and organization, and accounting, we are going to see over the coming years and decades so many changes to things that we consider quite constant right now. And when we talk about quant, it comes from that kind of foundation. It comes from the idea that we're looking at the tech itself, and we're breaking it down to the very standards and the very core infrastructure of how it works, and building up from there. So when we cover some of the things today, like QRC20 or ODAP, or some of these things, the idea is that this isn't just the next big thing in crypto. It's not the next shiny product. What this is technology that's coming out that is going to advance the space as a whole. That's going to advance humanity as a whole. And, you know, we're probably a couple years away from seeing some of the larger applications for, you know, enterprise and governmental uses and commercial rollouts across, you know, every single person. But even in the short term, in the next 6, 12, 18 months, there's still so many exciting things that are going to happen. And today, I hope that we're able to illustrate the magnitude of what Quant is really offering, and the distinction that they offer, both as a company in the efficacy of their solutions, but also selfishly as an investment vehicle. Why is the QNT token such an attractive thing? Why do you see this group of people in front of you today that has spent, again, over 10 years in this one community learning and still learning? So we're here today, Cher, and we're here today because it's something that we're extremely passionate about. And I'm looking forward to interacting with all of you. I'm looking forward to hearing what questions you guys have brought. This is an open Q&A, so as we go throughout our session today, you guys are all encouraged to request to speak and to ask questions to help clarify and understand the content as we go through it. And then also, as we get to the back end of the event, we're going to be opening it up for a live discussion on any type of questions you guys have that we didn't get a chance to cover. So, kicking it off, over the last week, we've collected some information via Telegram and Twitter, basically asking the broader community, what do you want to learn about Quant, or what are your biggest questions? And a lot of these questions come from people that are already inside the community and they have a greater knowledge of what the products are and how they work. So they're going to be, some of these are going to be specific technical questions, and that's going to be really interesting to some of you guys. But if you're just joining us and you're new to the Quant community, or you haven't had a chance to do a whole lot of research yet, I'm going to try to provide a little bit of context around some of these more specific questions just to help illustrate the broader picture of what's going on. So kicking it off, I'm going to start with something that I think everybody here is going to be really excited about, because it's something that gets asked a lot, and it's something that we don't have enormous clarity on yet. So there is a little bit of interpretation, there's a little bit of deduction, and there's also a little bit of critical thinking involved with this process. And what am I talking about? QNT Utility. The QNT token is the heart of the Quant Network, of Overledger Network, of all of Quant Network's products. They cannot operate without the QNT token. We'll get into that here shortly. But I have a couple questions specifically about the token. And the first one, pretty straightforward, is what is the utility of the QNT token? So which one of you guys wants to start that with?
Well, I think the obvious, like, first utility is for the licensing, right? And a lot of it, like you mentioned, we don't know exactly how it's going to play out when everything starts to flesh out and really flourish and the network becomes as powerful as it's going to be and starts to harness all of the use cases. But what we do know is that in order to even access the network, you need to pay in fiat dollars to Quant Network, the company, and that money is then converted instantly into QNT tokens. And those QNT tokens are locked up. And they're locked up in smart contracts that last for the duration of your license, which is typically a 1-year license. And so what this does is it creates a floor for supply in terms of taking the quantity off the market. And so when you have a token that's already at 14.6 million, which is a pretty low supply if you compare it to most coins, like for instance, one of Bitcoin's most desirable properties is its scarcity. It's 21 million, and Quant is at 66% of that approximately. So you have a really low token supply to begin with no inflation. And then you're taking a bunch of them off the market every year, locking up in licenses. And as you bring new people and new clients and new businesses into the network, that number will rise of tokens that are being locked up. And then you also have the gateways, which are not live. And I'm sure we'll get into that later because that's a big question. But once that system kind of takes off, you're going to need to stake your QNT tokens into gateways to help decentralize the network. So this is, it basically shrinks the supply in terms of what's available on exchanges. And it's going to drive price. Now, the other utility is going to be for actually making transactions. And the QNT token, a piece of that is broken off for every transaction that's made on the Overledger network and rewarded to the gateways. So even if you're not running a gateway and you want to, let's just say, come in and build an application, or you want to, bring a bunch of users in, or your company to come use something, or to access a certain data marketplace that has started to evolve, you'll again need to purchase QNT tokens on the open market. So the utility is to run gateways. It's to get licenses to create or to access the network from a developer standpoint, or it's to access it from a user standpoint and to come in and build, even if it's just independent projects. Now, I think where you start to open up your mind a little bit, and it's kind of hard to speculate, but there is going to be in my belief, an entire new game theory that starts to take place when this stuff starts to scale. So when you have a network that has now plugged in massive amounts of data, and we're not just talking about like financial transactions, because if you know about Quant, you know there are links to CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, and connecting these different banks and cross-border payments and all of these types of things. And that's excellent. However, there's also going to be a large amount of data that gets plugged into this network to flow across all of these new channels. And you're going to have new revenue models for different enterprises that are pushing their data or creating programmable types of infrastructure that allows people to come in and borrow their data or purchase their data. These different like decentralized marketplaces are going to evolve. And I think there's going to be ways to apply QNT tokens to help people access data and to manipulate data and to trade data that we can't even really like wrap our head around just yet. The same way that you can't really wrap your head around, if you're in 1998, you know that the internet is this thing that's going to connect everything and it's exciting. And maybe, you know, people are starting to fathom like, oh, you could have a marketplace and an Amazon kind of pops up, or you could have like a search engine and Google pops up, but there's no way you could have predicted Snapchat. You know what I mean? Like it was just a little too far down the road. But these are the types of things I think the QNT token will end up having an entirely different layer of utility that's non-obvious to us right now.
Wow, that was an absolutely phenomenal answer. I want to zoom out a little bit because I know that there's going to be some people on this call right now that aren't from our community, and they're hearing things that they know that sounds great and it's exciting, but it also sounds a lot like things you hear in virtually every single other crypto project. Not saying that Quant is a crypto project, but really just trying to compare things here. So when we talk about the end use cases and the applications for Quant's technology, when Greg mentions like Amazon scale organizations, those types of things get thrown around a lot. But Quant is really building something that allows for those types of use cases to evolve. I mean, from like a technical standpoint, what you can do with Overledger and some of Quant's products is only able to be done with something like this. So if you have an enterprise scale product and you want to roll it out to millions of end users, and like let's say you build your network and you plan on it running $100,000 a day or whatever the cost is. If you have any changes, like any changes in how the network operates, any changes in like the security, any compromise to scalability, you have a very ineffective way of rolling out your platform, and you really just don't see established global brands doing this type of like reactionary work. Like it's going to work in crypto for now, but to see true real world adoption and rollout of crypto and DLT, you have to have the platforms that provide the stability and the security and the scalability to operate at true internet scale. Dr. Puppers.
Hey, thanks, Hungarian. Yeah, I just want to add to that. I think people underestimate just how integral the QNT token is to everything Quant Network is rolling out. As far as I've understood it, but any use of basically any product they're going to be rolling out, or has been rolled out, so Overledger or Overledger Network or MLTs, the multi-ledger tokens, etc. If at any point something integrates any of these products, a payment in QNT has to happen. And I base this on a quote from Gilbert that he wrote in like 2019. I'm going to read it out because it's quite interesting. So he says, we're working on being the financial infrastructure to move digital assets between networks. There's a lot of activity in this space by banks. We're making QNT the way to sign, encrypt, and secure digital assets to move them between banks, making it the universal utility token. Can you imagine QNT moving JP Morgan coin to another bank or Facebook's Libra coin? All these need interoperability to transfer between parties. We're making that a reality. So I think that like the utility of the QNT token cannot be underestimated. It is basically anything like he uses the phrase universal utility token, and I think there is a reason why he puts it in those words. It's basically anything that they'll be rolling out will be touched by the token.
It really is amazing to think about how much demand there really will be for the QNT token. I'm reminded of another quote, and Jarno, I'm going to grab you in a sec here, but I'm reminded of another quote from Gilbert from, I believe, the LCX interview. And it's when he's asked about something around use cases for the QNT token. And the question was like a really surface level, like, is the QNT token necessary? Something like that. And Gilbert kind of basically laughs a little bit. And he starts talking about how he draws analogies to like a layer one kind of solution where you see this base currency that allows you to interact throughout the entire network. So just as you might use, AVAX tokens or Solana tokens or any other, major blockchain, you use their base network token to interact with the broader network. That's the same thing that you're going to see with Quant. So as we see applications and infrastructure and products and microservices and MDApps and all these different things roll out from public and private, the vehicle of interaction is QNT. And even if you're not a crypto user, it doesn't matter because it's all automated. So for people that are using these services, they just pay in fiat. They pay dollars just like they would in, if you wanted to go get the newest version of Microsoft Office, or if you wanted to interact with any other service or product online. And it's all automated to convert to crypto and provide this incremental scarcity via utility. Jarno, I know you've been waiting on that, so I'm going to jump to you next, and then Quantity and catch you after that.
Yeah, thanks, Hungarian. I totally agree with what you just said. And what I want to add to that is that people also need to understand that QNT is a real utility token. And what I often see is that people are misunderstanding Quant's purpose. I mean, Quant itself is not a means of payment, so it is not like XRP or Bitcoin, and that means that whatever data is being sent, no matter how small, no matter how large, QNT is always needed because it's used to sign the transaction and all that good stuff that has been explained before. So it's far farther reaching than just money alone. And we all know the 26, 27 verticals that Quant is actually targeting. It's been created, I believe, in Counchill by somebody. That makes it really exciting because the interoperability that Overledger and Overledger Network provides, and what QNT makes possible, far outreaches whatever is going on in crypto. And if you look at all crypto projects, 99% is just trying to be money or to make money better. But there's so much more going on in the world. Think about healthcare, supply chain, all those things. And then think of all the utility that Quant provides. Then imagine that, well, it's maybe a crazy example, but every email that's going to run through Overledger could be considered a transaction. So everything that is being sent over the network requires QNT to a degree, and also obviously requires a gateway. So every entity that uses it needs gateways. They need to lock QNT, and whether they want to do that themselves or they're going to let the tasks be performed by Treasury or whatever, they're going to be many different options. I heard someone say gateways as a service. So that means that the token is highly deflationary. There's going to be tons of lockups, and the utility is going to go crazy because it's going to be used for everything. And it doesn't matter if a transaction is 1 trillion times one transaction, or it's about the data that's being sent. So every message requires quant, which makes it super, super scarce, especially considering all of us are actually owning the vast majority of all the tokens. Super excited. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on what Jarno was saying here, as somebody who's, you know, done a lot of reading about quant over the last little while, is like one of the really fascinating and cool things about it is the elegance of the centrality of the token to the project as a whole, because it's used as if you want to interact with the Overledger ecosystem in any way, the token is your key to get into it. Like it's used as payment on the network for services that gateways will be doing or whatever. It's used as your license. It's used to cryptographically verify the transaction. It's used as your stake. And it's such an elegant way to do this. And so when I hear, especially when I hear people talking about like, well, wringing their hands about, is the token really going to be needed? Are they going to decide they don't want to use it for something? Like, they've devised this super elegant system that has this token at the center of it that, by the way, they talk up all the time. Like, you know, when you see, especially that LCX interview with Gilbert, you know, where he talks about it being a pure utility token. Like, we've come up with this system deliberately to have this token at the center of it, not just for what we're building now, but also anything we're going to add to the system in the future. The token is going to be your key to access it. And we're clear about that, and we've said it over and over again. So I think it's really worth pointing out, maybe again, especially for newer people who aren't super familiar with what's been said and haven't followed every Gilbert interview that's been out there, like we maybe have. Like, it's clear, it's been made clear that the token is the heart of the Overledger ecosystem, and the Overledger ecosystem is Quant's business that they've been building diligently and skillfully for some time now.
You know, I think that we could probably do this entire Q&A just on the utility of the QNT token. I mean, just on one specific element of the utility of the QNT token. I really could, just for hours and hours and hours. Jarno did say one thing, though, that I got pretty excited about, because crypto focuses very much on financial services. And the conversation around Quant is pretty heavily focused on things like CBDCs and other financial services products. But as he referred to, Quant is a universal interoperability solution. And what this means is any network that can benefit from connecting to another network is a potential use case, and those are potential clients and verticals. So there are dozens of different use cases outside of financial services, outside of CBDCs, outside of DLT and crypto as a whole. In fact, I've said this before, crypto and DLT could completely go away, and Quant Network could still be is still a relevant company that has immediate use cases and still solves things that are worth trillions and trillions of dollars. Jarno, again, healthcare interoperability is huge. That's actually where Overledger came from. Gilbert designed at least the core of Overledger in 2014 when he was working for Northwest Ambulance as the Chief Information Security Officer. He built part of the system to help organize and interoperate healthcare records. And if you don't know, that's actually a really big problem. You can't, like if you go to a hospital and you have your records at one hospital or with one doctor, you can't just send those over easily to another hospital, especially if you go to maybe a different country or you're in a different part of the world. It's extremely difficult to share health information. And that's a big deal because, like, let's say that you are traveling and you end up in the hospital and you have some medical emergency. Well, the ability for your healthcare provider to access your records in a timely manner and to be able to connect with your medical history, that's a matter of life and death in some cases. There's also enormous privacy concerns when we talk about the sharing of healthcare records. That's really why they're so siloed right now. So, I mean, that alone is a huge use case. We look at the IoT, the Internet of Things, smart cities. So when we talk about fully interoperable tokenized futures, and we think about every device, every wearable, every phone, every computer, every car, every street light, every camera, they're all connected to each other. They're talking to each other. They're sharing information in real time, being processed by AIs and different algorithms. And it's this massive network that continues to grow exponentially as devices add to it. all of that data is also flowing through the Overledger network. So whether we look at like an extension, we look at like the smart cities infrastructure through something like Constellation, or we look at other use cases. The network effects are exponential. In fact, actually, Metcalfe's law is something that gets tossed around a lot for crypto valuations. It's like a square proportional valuation of the network to its nodes. And I think that's one way to look at it. But actually, as I've been learning more about it, it's Reed's law that interests me the most. And Reed's law, I've got a post on my Twitter about it, but basically, it's like Metcalfe's law as far as network value. Your network grows proportional to the amount of nodes, or proportional to the amount of people on the network. But it also has pockets that grow faster based off of innovation. So an example could be like we see crypto and DLT adoption right now. It's the fastest adopted technology in all of human history. Crypto is being adopted right now faster than the internet, which was light years ahead of anything else at the time. So we could look at the broader crypto space as this exponentially increasing area. But then when we have innovation that comes out, we'll take Quant as an example. Universal network-to-network direct interoperability at internet scale. I mean, that's basically connecting in crypto the same way you can connect in a normal web browser. Like that's the level of interoperability we're talking about. So if you have something like that comes out, what do you think happens to some of the first partners and the first use cases and products that get taken to market? Not just crypto, but I mean, even just the established legacy world. Like what happens when a billion-dollar organization takes a scalable DLT solution to market first? What happens when some of the first crypto projects are able to release these multi-chain DeFi applications? What happens when you can start to build things that people don't even realize is possible right now? It gets really exciting. So in reference to Reed's law, what this means is that we could see near vertical appreciation of the QNT token through the associated utility. I mean, it gets a little bit deductive, but basically, if you think about it, greed is one of the biggest issues that humans have. And greed is one of the fundamental contributors toward the lack of trust. So for all of human history, we have not had the ability to trust someone we don't know. And that's largely in part to greed. We are designed to keep ourselves alive. We are designed to make decisions that benefit ourselves and move ourselves forward. And we can look at this many different ways, but ultimately humans will choose what's right for them over what's right for other people. So we have this fundamental flaw, and to fix that, we've just created a bunch of intermediaries that help us trust each other. And we create complicated different ways of looking at that and rules. But now that we have this and we have the ability to connect to each other, it really just stands to change so much. And it's quite incredible to think about the magnitude of what really is occurring right now. Before this entire chat turns into just a Quamfy rant for a couple hours on QNT tokens, I do want to stick to the content we prepared. So before we transition over to our next section, we just covered a few different questions on the utility of the QNT token. And I just want to know if there's any questions in the audience right now about QNT token utility. Go ahead and request to speak if you have any questions.
Hey, I have a quick question. Thanks for having this get together. Really cool. I'm trying to understand the differences. I mean, I understand how Quant is different than, let's say, Polkadot or Cosmos Atom. And actually, I just recently saw that Quant integrated Polkadot into their system. My question is, how does Quant differentiate itself from the token perspective and just in general from things like Chainlink or the new Flare networks? Thanks.
Hello, can y'all hear me? Hey, so my question is, how does the QNT token sign, send, and secure data?
All right, so we got two questions here. First question, question on the QNT differentiation from a tokenomic perspective, it sounds like, between something like that and another crypto. And then the second question, more technical question on the specific signing. Who wants to take this one?
Hey everyone, I think I'll take it. I'm the least technical guy in here, so I try to make it simple for you guys. Because I've also had this question a lot of times on Instagram. So I think you were asking for the tokenomics, right? In between Quant and other networks like Polkadot and Link.
Not really so much the tokenomics, more just
Yeah.
the functionality. Like what
Okay,
makes Chainlink different than Quant, and why is Quant better per se?
Of course. I'll try to answer that. Okay, so basically how I always explain it to everyone is that with a network like Polkadot or Cosmos, those networks, first of all, they are blockchains. And Overledger is not a blockchain. So that is the first distinction. We don't work as a blockchain. So we are a blockchain operating system, or actually a DLT operating system. So that's the first difference. The second one is that Overledger enables all networks, whatever that is, to interconnect. However, with not networks like Polkadot and Cosmos, they offer interoperability, but they only offer it within their own network. So that is the most essential difference, if that makes any sense. This is the least technical answer you'll get, but that's kind of in a nutshell what the difference is. If anyone wants to add something, I'll kindly invite you.
You don't get the same level of overhead as other blockchains, like you mentioned. And then it allows enterprise and government to freely roam their apps or anything that they want to do between different type of blockchains without being locked into a single blockchain. That's the biggest advantage. And what the CEO Gilbert mentioned in the past is that governments and companies don't want to be locked into a single blockchain because blockchains evolve, to be locked in something like Ethereum or Chainlink for an extended period of time has its advantages. So, I mean, the fact that it's not its own blockchain, it's an operating system, that itself is one of the biggest advantages of Quant's interoperability versus other projects.
Greg, there was a tweet recently that had a quote from Martin where he talked about it came out like yesterday or today, didn't it? Where he talks about Overledger being sort of a overarching interoperability solution in reference to its integration with Polygon with the most recent update. Do you have that to hand?
I think you're talking about, it was on the 2.2.4 release notes for Polkadot. I have to dig it up real quick, but
I thought it was the 2.2.5, but might be.
I think they just tweeted about it, but it was on the 2.2.4. Let me see. So it says, Martin Hargreaves, Quant's chief product officer, says, with our latest Polkadot release, and basically, guys, what happened here is this release, they're slowly releasing different connectors to different blockchains. So it's more than likely that there are many blockchains that have been connected already for their enterprise clients, but on the public-facing version of Overledger, through the Overledger network and being able to pay for licenses through MetaMask with your QNT tokens and things like this, they're slowly but surely rolling out the connectors that they can rely upon at scale that work with their front-facing like user software. And so they've just released their Overledger connector for Polkadot, the mainnet, as of today. This is from when they, the 2 weeks ago, their past update, they release every 2 weeks. This is the update before when they released for the Polkadot testnet. And the quote here again from Martin Hargreaves, which is Quant's chief product officer, said, "With our latest Polkadot release, we are building deeper interconnectivity into Overledger. Our public software as a service already connects to chains like Ethereum, Bitcoin, XRP Ledger, and Polygon. Additionally, we also have connectors to permissioned blockchains like Hyperledger Fabric and Corda. Quant's aim is to create a highly secure, enterprise-grade gateway and token issuance platform that works seamlessly with the most commonly used blockchains. Essentially, with the new Polkadot release, we can now connect to blockchains whose purpose is to connect to other blockchains. Effectively, Overledger is a higher level interoperability layer." So I think that's what you're talking about, Quantidian, where, as Tim mentioned, Polkadot provides seamless interoperability within its own walls, right? And so anything that's built through their substrate layer can talk to one another based on the way that the system is built. However, when you're trying to bring in other systems, I mean, you can't assume that everything's going to be built in your ecosystem. So while that makes for a very fluid system in itself, it's still going to have issues dealing with the outside world. And so this is where Overledger comes in for basically any network. And this is not only for blockchain networks. More importantly, this is for legacy networks as well, because you're not going to have banks and enterprises just disintegrate their entire tech stack in order to use blockchain. They're going to want a plug and play API like Overledger has built and Quant has built. And Polkadot is maybe a bank, or probably not a bank, but maybe, some medium or large business wants to play around in the Polkadot ecosystem. Maybe there's a cool metaverse that popped up in there, and they want to integrate that with their existing customers or their existing product, and they can do that using Quant's system instead of just having to start from scratch or build like some custom bridge connector that could be, there's a lot of technical things that need to be done there that provide, connectivity and maybe have security vulnerabilities. Overledger's already done the connecting, and not only will they be able to connect to Polkadot, but then they can connect to everything else that's already a part of the Overledger system. So when Hargreaves says that Overledger is effectively a higher level interoperability layer, it's like, sure, you can have interoperability within your system, but we're going to allow all the systems to interconnect, which is where they get their kind of mini slogan as a network of networks.
This is all so good. What I want to do
Thank
is, because we have so much stuff to talk about, I want to make sure that we can get through the questions the community has submitted. I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Puppers for one more comment on the QNT token utility. Then we're going to move on to a few more topics that the community has requested in advance. And then as we get to the back end of this, we're going to open it up again, both between different sections and as well as an open element at the end for a complete discussion on anything else you guys want to talk about. So Puppers, real quick.
Yeah, we got a quick question about how technically QNT is used to sign to sign transactions on Overledger, and this is not something that we have much information on, but the process of signing is something that already exists in the Ethereum ecosystem. So for whoever asked it, if you just look up like private public key cryptography, like asymmetric cryptography, you can sign a transaction or sign a message with your private key, which somebody else can check using your public key, so your address that you've actually signed it. So it's really not something. It's really not something that is it's not something that is new. It's something that's already been done.
Greg mentioned something that I want to highlight really quick before I go to the next topic. Overledger is technology agnostic. And what that means is that it doesn't matter what you are connecting to. So in the world of blockchain right now, if you want to connect to a different blockchain, or if you want to connect to, let's say, some legacy infrastructure, it's a very complicated process. There is no native way for these types of communication to connect to each other. And because it's not easy to do, That's why we see the landscape the way it is now. We see a lot of insecure bridges. We see elements of like interoperability, basically ecosystems, these blockchain islands that are interoperating at different levels within their own ecosystem. But we're seeing these different ideas pop up left and right, but not really some universal standard like the internet is today, to where we can all participate together. So by being technology agnostic, what that means is Overledger can connect to any blockchain always. It can connect to any network. So let's say that Netflix launches a new product in 5 years. Well, it doesn't matter if it's on DLT, it doesn't matter if it's on some different type of network, it doesn't matter what it is. It can still be utilized and it can still be connected. And that's a really important thing, because in a space that is innovating so quickly, and everyone here knows how fast crypto moves, we see new ideas and new things pop up every day, every week. And there's only more that's being built. So as this space grows and you continue to see more companies and more energy and more people get into this space to build, innovation and competition is only going to increase. And if your product or solution is limited to the underlying platform, you are subject to that limitations. So like, let's say you built your product and you built it on Polkadot. Well, that's great, and you can operate within that ecosystem. But let's say that a year down the road, let's say that Oracle releases a whole suite of like compliance tools that are necessary to really be relevant in the modern business landscape. Or maybe let's say that Coinbase comes out with a new tool that they want to use, and you want to be able to use it in your app quickly. Well, you either go through the back end process and spend exorbitant amounts of money and energy to create something, in some cases experimental, and work through the R&D on that, or you can use solutions in the same way that you look at the internet now. I mean, imagine if we didn't have things like WordPress and we didn't have things like Shopify. We didn't have these platforms for people to build their own tools on the internet. And then even going back further, imagine if we just didn't have a way to connect to each other and share these ideas. And if you're a little bit younger, you do have to imagine, because you weren't really around for that. But I remember the early internet days. I remember dial-up, being able to connect to my web-based games and hearing people on the phone. It's all changing very quickly, and it's pretty exciting to think about where this is all going. So if you guys have any more questions on the QNT token, we will cover more of this into the back half of this, but I want to make sure that we get through everything that was requested in advance. So the next thing that we received a lot of questions on is QRC20, and rightfully so. QRC20 is the newest product from Quant Network to be released, and it's being released in sections. And while we don't have the entirety of information that the community wants, we're going to go through what we do know, and we're going to talk about why we might think certain things and move forward from there and see if you guys have any questions. So first and foremost, what is QRC20? Who wants to take this one?
Hey, Hungarian, I'll take over. So I can't explain how excited I am about these QRC20, these multi-ledger tokens. I think it really takes so many of the technologies that Quant has developed and put it into one standardized contract that basically takes what the current day, like ERC20, like the Ethereum standardized contract of ERC20, that's super common, like the QNT token is ERC20, and adds immense functionality. So we're speculating, or I'm speculating a little bit of what these actual functionalities are, but I am basing this on what the Quant team has previously said that they're working on. And so as far as I've understood it, it's a multi-DLT lightning network. So let me break that down. That adds two huge functionalities. So obviously it's multi-DLT, which means that any token would not be limited to only be on Ethereum. It would be able to move outside of Ethereum onto different layer ones and be fully settled without any double spending across different DLTs and potentially even in systems which are not DLTs, so conventional legacy software systems. That's the first like huge upgrade to the ERC20, making it QRC20. And then I think the second one they've also added is that because it's a Lightning network, so it settles, it's basically a roll-up. So it basically settles not all transactions immediately. So instead, it batches transactions and settles that only when it needs to onto the layer ones. And what that means is that you can have huge savings in gas fees. There has been a number that Gilbert said, which is they've managed to bring down gas fees by up to 93%. And I think that applies to these QRC20 contracts too. Anybody else want to pitch in?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit on that. You know, there's something extra like this is these QRC20 at the current time. It appears that they are geared specifically towards financial institutions. So what these this isn't necessarily something that the everyday developer is going to want to use based on the current limited set of tools that are available. But for a financial institution, it's actually like a pretty nice suite of tools, which includes things like creating and minting your token, setting restrictive access to who can move, who can request, who can send, who can receive, setting up all types of payment functionalities. For instance, like these banks, the future of banks and stable coins is a big deal, and this kind of, I guess, goes into the CBDC conversation, but in the future, and the not too distant future, you're going to have things like the JP Morgan dollar or the Bank of America dollar or the Wells Fargo dollar or whatever it may be, which is all backed by money that they have in escrow in a traditional financial institution. And then they mint these multi-ledger tokens on Overledger. And these tokens will represent the dollar. They'll be backed by the dollar, and they'll probably have some reward system that will be tied to the bank's brand, right? So you come use our token because we give you this, and our token that gives you this. And all different companies are going to end up being tokenized in some fashion. But we're going to see this in finance very quickly through stablecoins. And this QRC20 technology is basically, it allows you to deploy a token that has specific financial functionalities in terms of what I mentioned with being able to set up permissions around sending and receiving and creating like programmable money. And so this is powerful because the banks are going to want to use this. And so I think QRC20 can probably expand over time. For now, they're geared directly towards financial institutions. And it's an extension of the multi-ledger token technology, again, which is that a single token that's minted on this network can actually settle across multiple networks, because what Overledger has done is essentially create a single layer 2, or as Dr. Puppers put it, a multi-DLT lightning network, of course, alluding to Bitcoin's lightning network, which is the layer 2 that allows for faster payments and for off-chain settlements. And this is across not just Bitcoin, but all DLT and legacy technology. And so when you add not only just that technology that allows you to create that interoperable token, but then you have specific tools that you can access through an easy to use interface on your computer and just mint your token, deploy it here, deploy it there, keep track of it, set permissions. It's very valuable, and it's very interesting to watch. It will be interesting to watch kind of how the QRC20 deployment unrolls.
You guys answered pretty much every question we'd initially received from the community. The only thing that we didn't cover in there was, how does this then translate into demand for the QNT token? And I think we've already kind of covered this. There's not really much to answer here. The QNT token is at the heart of all of Quant Network's suite of products. So to operate through QRC20, whether you're using an application that is put out by a partner or whether you're working with the tech directly. It does require QNT for every transaction, for every interaction, and that's also your primary incentive in the network too. In fact, I was talking about this on kind of a little bit unrelated topic, but I do think in the fairly short term, as we roll out to a more public-facing environment, that we'll start to see secondary markets of incentives develop because the QNT token has so much demand. I mean, we've covered quite extensively at this point why there's so many reasons the QNT token will be used. When you think about this now, we fast forward a year, 2 years, 3 years, when we're in an environment that, one, demands a higher level of regulatory compliance, but also in an environment that's more competitive, these solutions that are coming out all will interact with QNT in one way or another. So the demand for the token honestly isn't really a concern. I know that because we don't have the specific answers and the specific clarity a lot of people want at this time, it does require some deduction, requires a little bit of trust and faith in the team. But also I would say that recognize the caliber of people that we're talking about here. You know, this isn't just a random group of, you know, college dropouts that put together some crypto project. What we're talking about here is some of the most credible and established professionals you can possibly put together in the government, banking, and regulatory environment. I mean, these people are coming from decades of C-level cybersecurity and high-level positions of influence. The people that put together the core, the white paper for Quant. I mean, Palataska, it was one of the co-founders of Quant, and he is world-renowned for his insight into blockchain economics. In fact, he provides input on research papers and books on blockchain token economics. So do we objectively think that people that have PhDs, that have been in the space since basically inception, that are at the cutting edge of the academic applications and enterprise and government applications of this, do we think that those people would have the oversight to miss on such simple and fundamental concepts like the network stability? If the token isn't attractive to gateway operators, if the token isn't a stable investment vehicle for value, then gateway operators are not incentivized and the network is fundamentally insecure. It's a very simple principle. And when you look at the Quant team, it's really hard to truly believe that they would have any type of oversight in something that is relatively so simple. So before we move on, I know that QRC20 is something that soon we have a lot of questions. So I want to cover one more topic, and then we're going to open it up to questions on QRC20 and this next section because they're kind of related. And what I want to cover real quick is LACchain or LACchain, depending on how you want to pronounce it. LACchain is a infrastructure program for basically the entire continent of South America. We have at this point, I think, 12 countries that are involved in this project, and it's the complete digitization of the entire national critical infrastructure. So everything from their financial services and their banking to their identity to, I mean, I think even voting, emergency, like all your social programs that allocate resources to people in different ways. I mean, it's a complete digital overhaul into a tokenized DLT-based system. And Quant is providing interoperability for this. This is something that has been documented on both ends, and we have confirmation on all of this and quite a bit of insight as to where the project is at and what we could expect in the short term. But who would like to cover some stuff on LACchain? I know Puppers was talking about it earlier.
Yeah, I can jump in. I think maybe some background would be nice. So first of all, the LACchain, so that's Latin American and Caribbean chain. is it's like an infrastructure project that is actually being rolled out by the Inter-American Development Bank, which is this huge institution that is headquartered in Washington, D.C. And what they're doing is taking basically Latin America, which doesn't have the same level of infrastructure that we have in the West, and is trying to get them to jump ahead into even more evolved blockchain-based infrastructure for both their public services and for their private commerce. This includes, for example, the Latin American dollar, which Gilbert has spoken about. So they want to make a stablecoin for these countries denominated in dollar for them to trade among themselves, to be a retail CBDC in dollar, and to trade back to America. So it's this huge infrastructure project that they're rolling out. And I don't know if anybody here was watching the Financial Times conference a few days ago, but there was some coverage on LACchain, and with an estimate that it's going to be live in, I think it was 2023, which is not that far away. And we know that LACchain is, to a very high degree, based on the technologies that Quant Network supplies. There is a public partnership between Quant Network and LACchain. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see national level, international level utility start flowing through Overledger and Overledger Network, starting hopefully next year. I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah, LACchain is very, very interesting to me. If we kind of like think about the future and we think about like, let's jump ahead a little bit, and it's tough. Sometimes it's tough to see the exact steps that you're going to take, right? So if I hop in my car, right, and I want to go to my friend's house, which is an hour away, I know that that's the destination, but I don't really know how to get there exactly, but I just follow the GPS and I get there eventually, turn by turn. And right now we're just kind of like taking some turns, and we don't really know like necessarily what's 10 miles ahead or 20 miles ahead. But if you just think about the destination, think about if blockchain really does become an infrastructural foundation, the same way that the internet has, right? And what that could look like on a national or regional, international scale. And LACchain is really the first regional or multinational instance of distributed ledger networks at play. And so it's a DLN is what they call it, which is distributed ledger network. And it's a public permissioned network. So what that means is you have like your public networks, your public permissionless networks, like Bitcoin and Ethereum. They're public, permissionless. Anyone can use them. There's no identity involved. Like as long as you have an internet connection, you can get on and access those networks. And you also have private permissioned networks like Hyperledger and Corda, which are, you need to go through the company and you need to get certain permissions from them, and everything is privatized. And then you have something like LACchain, which is the first example of a public permissioned network. So it seems like a bit of an oxymoron, but what it basically means is it's public in the sense that anybody can use it. There's no artificial barriers from preventing you from using it. So think of it like public education or public health or public roads. Like there's no reason that anyone can't use those. All you have to do is sign up. So the permissioned part is that you actually do have to provide some identification in order to use those, right? So to drive on the roads, you need a license. To get into the public school, you need to sign up, and give your address and your name and whatever. So it's public in that anyone can use it, but it's permission in that you just need to show ID, and once you do that, you can use it. So this is across multiple Latin American nations, double-digit nations that are this network that they've launched now called LACnet, LACnet, is going to provide infrastructure for things like digital identity, for things like the Latin American dollar, for things that help small businesses get up and running and be able to trade data, for healthcare payments, for welfare payments, for retail payments, basically anything you can think of that blockchain could be applied to on a public grade sense, like an institutional level, a governance level. And I want to read you just really quickly some insight that we got from an individual who works at Cambridge as the digital assets lead. And he put out a little tweet storm about where LACchain is in their progress and basically just kind of the way that the network is structured. And he said that he's never really been, or it's been a long time since he's been as excited about a permissioned blockchain system. And I'm just going to read you a couple of his tweets that kind of orchestrate or illustrate, I should say, how the network is being developed or how the network functions. So he says governance is decentralized, meaning that all members have a say, but it's facilitated by a legal entity that orchestrates memberships, like contractual agreements and things of that nature. So everybody has a vote on the direction of the network as long as there's like some legal structure in place. Members, anyone that creates a node on the network, they run their own nodes. So currently there's 120 different nodes across 80 plus institutions, and they receive technical assistance from the LACchain initiative. And they're also encouraged to run their own writer nodes, which is basically just going to be a node that has more access and more ability to help the network function. And there is a clever validator rotation mechanism to ensure that maximum resilience and decentralization takes place. So it's not just like, here's our set of validators that validate the transaction. There's like a rotational system based on an algorithm and, replacing underperforming nodes and things of that nature. There's no transaction fees on the network. Dynamic gas allocation is based on membership type and network load to optimize capacity. And then there's end user privacy from a network perspective by introducing something called second signature step, which I'm not overly technical, but it appears there's an extra step involved too that like kind of overlays your, your details in terms. It's probably I would imagine a kind of a simplistic form of self-sovereign identity. And there's over 50 projects up and running on the network already that are in advanced pilot stage. So again, as Puppers mentioned, this network is set to go live in 2023. And if you think about news like, oh, El Salvador is making legal tender and people are like using Bitcoin to to spend Bitcoin. It's like, that's cool. That is cool. And that's a big step. It's one country and it's one use case. And this is something that like dwarfs that by quite a bit. There's double-digit countries. There's double-digit use cases. It's being employed across this entire infrastructure, and all of the different systems that run on it is all being interoperated through Quant's Overledger, and this is public information. So this is an extremely exciting project, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing where this goes.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that a little bit, because it is super exciting. Like in that in the Financial Times where Gilbert was talking about that, I believe he made it reference to it in relation to something about discussion around retail CBDCs. And so the LA dollar, Latin American dollar, existing within this LACchain framework is going to be a retail CBDC, which we've seen some trial projects for retail CBDCs coming out of places like the Bahamas. I know China has theirs. And there's one in Africa, I can't recall which country, that they've been testing the waters on these things. But a retail CBDC so close on the horizon, existing within a DLN framework, this is going to be such a huge proof of concept that it's really, really exciting and probably flying under the radar to like a pretty huge degree. So it's definitely worth following very closely. But that ties into something else I wanted to say, which I think connects into almost everything else we've said, but hasn't actually been stated explicitly yet, which is one of the strengths of Quant and what they're building is this whole standards and regulation aspect. And that touches into the tokenomics, it touches into the token utility, it touches into the utility of the project as a whole, touches into questions about why is Overledger a better solution than some of these other things that look like they're doing something very similar, interoperating different blockchains. And the answer is that, Overledger is not only going to be a turnkey solution for interoperating all of these networks, including legacy networks and data networks and DLNs and all of these other things. It's going to be a turnkey solution for regulatory compliance and standards compliance, ISO standard compliance as well, with the work that Gilbert has done with TC307 and the work that will subsequently come out of that. And of course, the work being done around ODAP, which we haven't even touched on here, and the IATF work around that. Like, that's such a huge aspect to not only the proposition of Overledger succeeding as an entity, but the value proposition of QNT as a token as well, because it's so interconnected with that. And just hasn't been stated explicitly, so I wanted to say, like, that's a big deal when you're talking about why Quant, why does it matter? Why isn't Chainlink or Polygon or one of these other things just good enough to do the work? For the use cases Quant is looking at, especially right now, so huge.
It's amazing. We really could spend any number of hours on just one of these topics, because there's so many ways they branch off, so many different prerequisites really that are required to make sure that you understand the differences. Because as you've seen, we've taken 20, 30 minutes or so just to explain some of the distinctions between Quant and other solutions that have similar terms. Like, how does Quant differentiate from a blockchain interoperability solution or an Oracle network solution or whatever? The fact that it takes so much foundational information to understand some of these key distinctions is part of what makes Quant so difficult to understand. It's part of, I believe, why Quant is still so under the radar. I mean, Quant has 47,000 holders, which is absolutely minuscule in comparison to the use case and the total addressable market that they're looking at. I mean, for context, the total addressable market and use case for Quant is all of the world's networks. It's not even just the internet, it's all of the world's networks. Let that sink in for a second. And this isn't to speak with superlatives or to try to exaggerate and say, oh, shill, this is my token, buy my bag. Like, dude, not at all. Like, QNT, Quant it's an organization that is actively changing the landscape of the world. What Quant is producing, and of course there's going to be other major players. Some are out there now, some are still in development. Like, it's not the only name that's going to be successful. But why we're uniquely excited about Quant is, one, it's a tradable solution available now. So we as retail, we can invest in it, we can own these tokens. And two, it's something that is relatively documented at the scope of what's actually happening. I mean, when you look at even just LACchain as an example, this is one project from one partner that is larger than virtually every single application of cryptocurrency and DLT in current state. Depending on how you want to look at it, like the idea of having the entire infrastructure of multiple countries running on blockchains and running through DLN or through a DLN is something that isn't even really, it's barely being discussed right now. We've seen a lot of other countries, papers coming out talking about these ideas and looking at the possibilities, analyzing the different tech solutions, what they could and couldn't do. But with LACchain, I mean, this is a production-ready solution. We're seeing a commercial rollout to end users in sub 12 months, basically, which is absolutely insane. It's truly incredible. Now, to be respectful for everyone's time, I want to circle back and give everyone a chance to ask questions. We've just covered QRC20, and we've covered LACchain. So, opening to the audience now, what questions do you guys have on these?
Sorry for interrupting. I want to add a little bit onto your last on the last thing you said, and that's regarding how Gil is actually operating. And Bas He's also in the chat. He spoke with us about this in a couple of Quamfy shows back. And Gil is technically using cheat codes, because what he's actually doing, he's approaching everything from the top down. He's creating the standards with the lawmakers and with the policymakers and with the thought leaders. He's creating the standards. He's creating the rules. He's setting up the entire playing field. And whenever he sees an opportunity, say SIA, then he dives onto it and he tries to onboard them. So he onboards entire ecosystems. So in this case, SIA is now obviously with Nexi and all their other mergers, it is the biggest payment infrastructure in Europe. He banked that technically within a year, because it takes about a year to onboard an ecosystem like that. He did the same with LACchain. Why go to each country individually? Let's just create an entire infrastructure for an entire continent. Let's just do it that way. And that's how he just keeps on rolling. And that's how he's probably going to roll with all the other things and all the other solutions that he's going to implement. Thinking about EPSI. There have been rumors about BSN. All those big-ass projects, continents-wide projects, they're all going to adhere to the standards. They are all going to use the overledger solution. And then, another example, Oracle. They got Oracle certified. They could have tried and get all those companies one by one. And then you have to go through the process of winning their confidence, winning their trust, and implementing all that stuff. He didn't do that. He went to Oracle, or Oracle came to them. They got certified, and now they have access to 430,000, something customers. And they can all trust Oracle because they trusted Oracle before, because they chose for them. Same with SIA, same with LACchain. So if that doesn't make you bullish for the future, I don't know what does. Wanted to add to that. Thank you.
I have a quote here from Gilbert. It's one of my favorite quotes. I think I've probably forwarded into quant groups or posted it on Twitter a couple dozen times at this point, because it's just truly mind-blowing. This quote comes from when SIA was the active partner. SIA at the time was one of the world's largest fintech companies, dwarfed by only a few names, one of which Swift. In the time since this tweet that I'm about to read, or in the time since this message, SIA has merged with Nexi and Nets, two large national fintech organizations. And now the organization they represent collectively, Nexi Group, is Europe's largest fintech. It is bigger than Swift. So this organization that is actively and has been actively using Quant through all of their products, who's releasing an entire suite of overledger powered products. Like it's all in their public reporting if you look through it. This is the quote from Gilbert. Well, not many people understand the scale of SIA. It's one of the world's largest financial infrastructures that connects central banks, commercial banks, financial institutions, and governments. If you think of any bank globally, they are already connected to SIAnet. They all have access to LACchain and now to Overledger. And here, it would have taken us 20 plus years just to meet half of those clients. We've gained access to all of them. And this isn't an exaggeration. These ways of connecting, these ways of establishing relationships and partners, from the creation for the world standard for blockchain. By the way, ISO TC307, that is the global standard for blockchain. ISO 20022, that is a messaging data standard. It is not the same, and they work together. They think of it like a Venn diagram. The other, Oracle, again, 430,000 clients, not 430,000 individuals, 430,000 organizations that have access, that are already using Oracle. I mean, when you look at how these companies work, they have established their products and they've established their stack and their back end, and it largely operates through the same infrastructure, the same service providers. So anyone who's already been using Oracle through Oracle Cloud or Oracle Fusion or whatever enterprise public product they're using. All of the updates and microservices that come through Overledger Network, that come through Oracle Blockchain Platform, it increases exponentially. Think Metcalfe's law. It's just a network. It increases exponentially with every partner on the network. So now just in Oracle, through this overarching connection of working through the top line organizations, 430,000 businesses that continue to innovate across every industry in the world. The products and solutions that trickle down through that are powered through Overledger. And whether it takes 1 step, 2, 3 to get to retail end users to be a little bit more tangible from the utility, to be a bit more obvious on the use cases, it doesn't really matter, because the steps that are happening right now, they've been in progress for so long and they take so long to happen that Quant has all but secured, like, worst case scenario, being a dominant player in the Web3. Like, worst case scenario is Quant is one of the largest players in the Web3. It's truly, Web3 and beyond, it's truly incredible. So before we jump to the next section, I just wanted to make sure we get a chance to ask any questions for the audience. For QRC20 and for LACchain, did we have any questions?
Hi, yes, I have a couple questions, not specifically about LACchain or the QRC20, but it does involve them. When Gilbert had his vision for the Quant Network about 10 years ago, he stepped into the role understanding the landscape, the tech, and the people in the financial services industry. And, he thought about the creating a translator, basically, for DLT languages. And, then he thought about, okay, I want to onboard as many people at once as possible because I only have a certain amount of time. And so he went with SIA, Oracle, Amazon, etc. And then, worked on government entities like LACchain or like the central banks. Where do you think Gilbert has his focus now? What do you think their conversations within the company sound like? Obviously, this space is really great for people like us in the retail section, but within the company itself, where do you think that they're really putting their energy?
That's a good question. And this is obviously complete speculation. Nobody here has any insight into like the roadmap of the company, and just to put that out there. But I think what's really interesting is like, and I could talk a lot about, how we're talking about getting these networks first and then allowing things to kind of organically flow and organically build, that Quant has positioned itself at quite literally and figuratively, the infrastructural layer when it comes to the way that they're exposed to all these different sectors and all these different ecosystems. So I think they're going to continue to try and onboard large ecosystems as they've done. I think where they're turning now is to the educational side of things. So we've seen them launch a course with King's College London around helping standard developers, just regular engineers that have nothing to do with blockchain, that are coding, for Google and for whoever else, they build programs, take those same languages and come and build blockchain platforms, and not just blockchain applications, but multi-blockchain, multi-DLT applications using Overledger that allows developers to code in 12 plus standard languages, like your C, like your Java, like your Rust and Ruby and all these things. You can build multi-blockchain applications on Overledger with those standardized languages. So they've launched this course that people can sign up to for free. There is a paid version that you can get, like then a certification and things of that nature, but you can take the course for free. So you can Google that. It's on a platform called futurelearn.com, and it's through King's College London and Quant Network. And and then you've also seen over the past few weeks, they have started to release some educational content on their website with regards to blockchain terminology and things of that nature to just help. I mean, I think what they're really focused on is bringing the traditional financial world into DLT, right? And they're doing that through their technology, which is now standardized and certified and fully regulatory compliant. It's been integrated into tons of large ecosystems with many players underneath each ecosystem. And now they're saying, okay, the technology is pretty much in place. Of course, there's always going to be growth, and they're going to be building more connectors and advancing that. And they have their team, I'm sure, working diligently on putting out these updates, which, to be honest, they've been very consistent on, especially since the turn of the new year, in terms of every 14 days, bam, 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 we're getting these updates to the technology. But then also it's like, okay, how do we expand? And it's okay, we need to tell the 27 million developers that are out there that they can build blockchain applications, because currently there's only about 250,000 blockchain developers and there's 27 million developers. So how do we get the other 90%, quick math, I think that's right, to be able to build blockchain on blockchain? They can do it here, they can do it through us, and there's no questions. There's no like, there's a lot of people that are skeptical of this space because they don't really know how things are going to unfold from a regulation standpoint. And we keep coming back to that. But these standards and these regulations are so key. And we haven't even touched on ODAP today, which I think we should at some point. But it's just another way that Gilbert has basically gone ahead and, you skate to where the puck is going, not where the puck is, right? And so we are already positioned. And that's why it's kind of like people want to rush, and people are like, well, if it's being used and if it has all these big partnerships, then like, why isn't the token going up? And where's the utility of the token? Like, it's like, no. We've laid the groundwork. It's like when you finally realize that you have to go to that building and not that building, like we're the right building, and you go in and it's like, oh, look what's in here. This is amazing. And it's like, it's already built. And of course, by that point, the token will be worth a lot more because there will be less risk at that time. There's perceived risk at this time. But the deeper you dive, you realize, okay, we're actually like incredibly fundamentally well positioned. So long answer, but I think that they're turning their eyes to independent developers and to people in terms of educating them on how they can build on blockchain using Overledger.
Thank you. That was great.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg. Hey, Matt, welcome. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. Thanks for letting me ask here. But when it comes to, obviously, Quant is in, they work a lot with regulators. They're into compliance, and one of their main goals is obviously to have KYC across all wallets. They're just in line with that narrative. So I guess in the future, as DeFi kind of expands and there's more TVL, more value locked across DeFi, will Quant kind of be in a position to allow for that value to transact on Overledger, or will using Overledger kind of necessitate some sort of KYC on there and DeFi won't be able to participate? So it's more just wondering, can we consider DeFi's volume as part of the total addressable market that Quant can achieve? Or if they're taking a purely KYC stance where you need to know every transaction that goes through, who the wallets belong to and all that, do we just not include DeFi's total addressable market as something that Quant can capture?
That's a really good question. And I think it's important to first identify what is DeFi and what does that look like? Because right now, DeFi as it currently stands is probably very different than it will look like in the coming years. We know that there's going to be a lot of regulatory clarity coming in, not just for the US, but for the global landscape on what crypto is and what you can and can't do. So DeFi as it currently stands is a very powerful tool. And we look at ideas of private entities being able to issue stable coins and being able to program the creation of value in certain ways. That has some implications that potentially could create a lot of friction with the existing financial world. And it's, you can look at things from like an idealistic perspective. There's a lot of different opinions in crypto. I'm really not here to argue on the right opinions. I just think that if we look at it, I don't see the balance of all the world's money and power shifting dramatically. I don't see like crypto becoming this open utopian free world where, you know, there's no law and order and everyone can do whatever they want. Like some of the ideas are out there in more of the open concepts of crypto. But to speak more to your question, I look at like, how will the evolution of permissionless and permissioned ecosystems evolve? How will that value transact within the ecosystem and then within each other ecosystem? So the way that I look at that is, how will value interact from the permissionless world, like that open, decentralized, anonymous, kind of think of it like, kind of like the dark web is right now. And then how will that interact with more permission realms, whether that's a fully permissioned environment, or it's a public permission environment, something like we're seeing with the creation of LACchain and with some other instances of Overledger. We're all speculating, so we of course don't know the answers, but the gateway operators for Quant do have to KYC. That's what provides a lot of the security. So gateway operators would be KYC'd in all environments, but the way I understand it, it would be up to the products and services and applications being built on the network to create different types of environments. So like, let's say you could have a company that comes out that has a higher level of maybe compliance they're trying to adhere to, or maybe they operate in a different jurisdiction. I think that we'll see a lot of variability, but I also think that will see the creation of an entirely new financial services space. So DeFi right now, like the value, whether or not Overledger becomes integrated into DeFi as it stands right now, there'll definitely be overlap of value as value from like that open permissionless world enters into the regulatory existing world. So even if that doesn't transfer, like Overledger is being used in just strictly crypto peer-to-peer projects, you still have the enormous amount of network effects that happen as the world gets into this new financial technology. So if we look at like existing financial institutions, like let's say JP Morgan, well, JP Morgan is going to eventually develop, and they probably already have, financial solutions that mirror a lot of things you can do in DeFi right now. And I think that we're going to see the creation of whatever we want to call it, the C DeFi space, centralized DeFi space, the public permission world, like however you want to look at it. There's this middle of the Venn diagram where everything meets up, and you have Quant Overledger gateways that can host different services and products, and then those products can interact in different ways. But when value wants to go from like this bubble of public permissions into a permissionless environment, those like on and off ramps, and this isn't through Quant, by the way, this is like just how we see it developing. Those on and off ramps would be those points that could potentially either limit how value moves, or those could be the KYC points. So no, in short, it's not necessarily Quant that is trying to do all of this. It's more of they're just creating a solution that's a part of how the world is evolving. And whether or not value, like we look at the TVL for DeFi right now, it's a lot of money, but in comparison to existing financial services, it's quite minimal. I mean, what happens when JP Morgan offers like lending protocols to their clients, and they have trillions of dollars of wealth under management? They start advising their clients to engage in these services that are, obviously powered by Overledger and other things. The amount of value that can move across that ecosystem and that will be generated is orders of magnitude ahead of anything that's occurring in DeFi right now. So I know it's not like a perfect answer to your question, because frankly, I don't know the answer. I'm not a regulatory expert. I'm not on the board of anything creating these rules and regulations. But when we look at just more objective and abstract concepts, it seems rather almost inevitable that massive ecosystems of value will develop just from the existing value, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it was a great answer. Thank you. Yeah. I had one small follow-up question, and then It was more about the privacy chains and their interconnectivity with QRC20. Since Quant, again, working with a lot of regulatory bodies, kind of a top-down approach where they want to know, but whoever they're working with wants to know who's interacting. Will there be a world where privacy networks will have a chance to actually participate in QRC20, or will they remain kind of on the sidelines as cash alternatives as we move away from cash?
You know, I think a lot of times the idea of quant and CBDCs gets maybe taken out of context. There's a lot of ideas floating around for CBDCs and for what the future of the internet and privacy looks like. I don't think it is as aggressive and as dystopian as a lot of people maybe are concerned about it. You might see, like, technology is a fairly neutral variable. It's humans that are the ones that influence it. So, like, you could have a technology that's capable of doing all types of things, but it's up to how we use it to create the impacts. So, like, you could see a country, maybe in a different part of the world that could use this type of this technology to create more of a command network or a system of control. Like, sure, you have just orders of magnitude better of efficiency. You have the ability just to do so many things. So yeah, you could, but is that necessarily like the future? Do we see that happening, at least in Western countries, and how that plays out? I personally don't think so. I think that when you look at the recent communication that's come from Quant, the recent communication that's happening in the global landscape around CBDCs, around privacy, it's something that's discussed quite a bit. And they want to make environments, like when you look at these CBDC reports and you see like banks talking about the technology, they want to make it as private as possible. They want to still give people as much control as possible. And ideally, especially like when we see like with like LACchain, give people empowerment. I mean, can you imagine like an effective system of government that has effective social programs with transparency and auditability and accountability? That's crazy. So I don't think it's going to be as dystopian as people think it's going to be. So I don't really see that being too much of a concern.
Great, thank you.
Lambos or food stamps? I know you've been asking or you've been wanting to ask a question for a while. What you got, man?
Yeah, I have a question about the QNT token itself, in this regards to the network. I know it's needed for the network to function, but what's stopping the possibility of it just needing one QNT to run the whole network? Like, why do we need multiple QNT tokens?
I've been waiting for this question. It's actually, because I understand where you're coming from. You're not asking this maliciously. You're like genuinely trying to understand like the variables and inputs for the network, because you could have you have 18 decimals in this ERC20 token, and when you break it down, you could, if you just wanted to use the smallest possible units, you could try to use less of the total amount of tokens. So to that, I would say, first and foremost, why would you design a system that does that? If we go back to what we were talking about earlier with the purpose of the QNT token, the QNT token is designed to be an attractive thing. If the QNT token was not something that a gateway operator felt confident putting enormous amounts of money and energy into, then the network is going to lack security. So if fundamentally it was designed in a way to where there were these huge loopholes that allowed the network just to collapse in value, that would fundamentally compromise the security. So that's the first thing I would look at, is like, do you think that type of oversight is something that we're going to see from people of this caliber? But when you look at it, one thing that I think about is the inertia of the utility. So when we look at how Quant Utility works, the Treasury automates the conversion of fiat into QNT tokens. So as the network is used, whether this is QRC20, MLT, Overledger Network, like whatever iteration of Quant technology, it all uses Quant, all uses QNT tokens. So as we see these partners roll out use cases, and for Oracle, I mean, that's like Oracle rolling out tools that then other businesses then use that create increasing network effects from there. Like this doesn't go straight to consumer. As these things continue to roll out, it means that there will be more usage of the network. In fact, actually, I think it might still be pinned from Greg. Raoul Pal did a really cool analysis of network effects, and he overlaid the price of some of the most popular tokens. I think it was Bitcoin, Ethereum, and I think XRP. And he overlaid those relative to measurements of their network effects, so measurements of like the users on their network. And it was uncanny how they aligned. In fact, if you haven't seen this, it looks like it is still pinned, so you should check out the thread that's pinned right here. It is truly incredible, the accuracy that you see these things mimic each other at. So whether you want to use a valuation model like Metcalfe's law or Reed's law or whatever idea, it doesn't really matter too much, because the concept is that as the network grows in usage, it grows in value. So how does that translate to QNT tokens, or rather more specifically, how does that translate to the amount of QNT tokens being used? So I mentioned inertia. If we think about how the network is being used, as it's being utilized, conversions of fiat are driven into QNT tokens, and we see the accumulation and usage of QNT tokens, which drives scarcity, which ultimately is going to have a positive impact on price. To get to a point where you're seeing license fees and transactions and developers paying their, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars in license fees, millions of dollars in license fees, to have a couple $100,000 convert to 0.01 QNT, the QNT token would have to be at such a low, or it would have to be at such a crazy value that's just not something that it could immediately jump to. So the network effects, like this continued increasing scarcity, dictates that there will always be more scarcity, always be more demand for the QNT. And because you have like this flywheel that's just spinning faster and faster and faster, it's not going to change or just stop out of nowhere and create an environment where you start seeing these conversions drop 99+%. It's not really possible. And again, we share this with obviously our minimal public insight into the project, but a lot of this stuff is logic and deduction. Like we know some things, and we know that these are extremely capable people. In some cases, they're thought leaders in their industries. These are not the kind of people that make obvious mistakes. And personally, I don't think that any of us, unless you guys are really just truly technical experts, I'm certainly not, but I don't think that really much of us would be able to find anything that they haven't already thought through, let alone find something that is actually a problem and be able to work through it enough and just in understanding it. So I know it's not like a lot of this, it's not just a cut and dry, clear answer, because we don't have a lot of that yet. But I hope that this is providing some clarity, and I hope that our perspectives help you guys understand some of these questions. The purpose, and like if you notice, the topics we've chosen, they're not like the craziest quant topics. We're not talking about the most exciting FA, like we haven't even talked about ODAP yet. We're answering the questions that you guys had. And frankly, a lot of the questions were fairly critical, which is okay. And I wanted to make sure that this platform today was something that allowed us to be honest and allowed us to talk about what we know and what we don't know, and collectively move forward from there. So in short, while these might not be the direct answers and the most exciting content you guys have ever heard about quant, it is what you guys have requested from us. And I wanted to be true to you and to be sure that we actually got a chance to talk about what was important to the community. So looking at the time, I want to make sure that we get through as much as possible here. We do have a couple people on the call that have some hard stops coming up here shortly, but I have a few more questions I wanted to go through. So it's time. Let's just say it. Dashboard gateways. When? Your answer is soon. Your answer is when it's time. But my answer, because we don't know, obviously, I think I would ask why. Why do you want gateways? Why do you want a dashboard? Do you want gateways in a dashboard because it's the critical logical progression for the network? Or do you want it for your own insight because A, we want confirmation on our ideas and our investments to ensure that we are making the right decision. We want the ability to speculate and be able to drive price. We want, of course, the ability to engage with the network and use it, but ultimately that's also for personal gain. I think we obviously want staking from that, the ability for passive income from our QNT tokens. We want these things, but when you look at what all of that means, we want those things because it's what benefits us, whether it's our perspective or our own personal interests. It's from that. But if we look at the team, Quant's objective is to grow the organization. It is to develop new products and to have those products roll out to as many clients and as many use cases as possible. And from what we've seen, I think they're pretty effective. I mean, I certainly wouldn't, I don't know the first thing about being able to do anything at the level that Quant is doing. And you think about the connections and the interactions, whether it's first or second degree connections, the caliber that Quant is involved at is just something that isn't seen elsewhere in crypto. So again, going back to the trust, like, do you trust the team to develop and execute on their vision and their strategy? Yeah, I do. And if you don't, I hope that this call and future discussions help you understand the broader picture. But it's okay to be critical. It's okay to ask these questions, and it's okay to seek to understand. So first and foremost, I want to address that. But looking at this from a different perspective, again, why do we want gateways? Why do we want the dashboard? Not just when, but why? I think that there is a fundamental disconnect between the technical progress and internal strategy for what is best for Quant Network, and then our own personal gain and our own personal interests. And if we can just acknowledge that, I think that's the first step to having the right type of discussion on these timelines. So again, yeah, it's not the answer you want. It's like, oh, in 14 days, Gilbert's going to have an avocado omelet. And then after that, he's going to jump on a call and he's going to tell us all about the newest Overledger product that's coming out. Like, it's just, that's not the kind of company we're involved with. I think the best way to look at this, like Gilbert has said, is this is like the early days of an organization like Google or of that caliber. And those organizations, they're private, at least at that point. They don't have a responsibility to share some of the information you guys have requested, like internal financial metrics and some of the reporting on their spending and other things. But they also, from a strategic standpoint, especially in this space now that's moving so quickly with so many different ideas, what's their benefit to come out before everything's ready and just to start being really public about things? Because Quant doesn't need or really want the token to be hyped and just pumped up for the price of moving the token. They want the token to move up, but they want it to move up through the network growing and the way it's designed to go. So if they do what we want, yeah, it'll probably go up in the short term because it'll create some hype. I mean, damn, Quant could create some serious hype with a very minimal amount of energy at this point. The fact that we have hundreds of people that are tuning into this call just to hear people that are from the community talk and speculate about what we've heard over the last 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, that's tremendous in and of itself. So I know that this isn't, again, super clear on gateways, but that's my perspective. And personally, I know that once they happen, that it's not if, it's when. So whether that's a month from now or 3 months from now or 6 months from now or even next year, it doesn't really matter, because all these fundamentals and all these ideas and these applications, they're still true and they're still growing. I mean, Gilbert has told us that 2022 is going to be bigger than 2021. And 2021 brought us the release of the Overledger network. It brought us insight into LACchain, into ODAP, into global protocols for internet development. It brought us the Oracle certification, one of the largest announcements for all blockchain of 2021. And we know that 2022 is going to be bigger, according to Gilbert. So knowing that in the coming weeks, we're going to be seeing rebrand, or sorry, not a rebrand, we're going to be seeing a new website. And then also knowing that historically, shifts in Quant's website have accompanied product releases and strategic milestones. I think it would probably be fair to expect some type of insight and clarity toward a lot of these ideas in the fairly short term. So I would say when soon, when stay tuned, because there's a lot coming out in the short term, but recognize why you're asking what you are and recognize why you want what you do, because we have to remain of the right perspective. And as soon as we start shifting toward that selfish, I want my token to go up perspective, like, yeah, of course I want $10,000 QNT. But I also recognize that Quant Network is an organization that's growing very quickly and has their own highly strategic plan for everything. It's probably been thought through more than we can possibly comprehend, and by people that are way smarter than me. So I'm personally not worried. I know that people have some concerns around communication, people have some concerns around timelines, but just recognize this isn't a crypto project. Like, frankly, it's not a crypto project. And that's why crypto could disappear and this could still be one of the world's biggest companies. It bleeds into crypto. It has ties into crypto. Financial services is huge, but it's not a crypto company. Their goal is not to pump the token via hype. And that has implications, and that's what we're seeing now. That's not a bad thing. In fact, that's a good thing, because it'll survive the regulatory cleansing and all those different things that happen with that. But we have to acknowledge this, because that is a fundamental pillar of our perspective, our expectations, and what the future of Quant is going to be. So skipping forward, just a couple more questions really quickly, unless anybody has anything they want to jump in on gateways and dashboard.
Yeah, I mean, I can just quickly echo what you said about this not being a crypto company. It's like, just understand when you're invested in this, what you're investing in. You're investing in a business. You're like, I was just saying this on the Quamfy show yesterday, is that this is the first time that we've really seen a B2B company that has like a passionate community. Like, that doesn't really exist. And that's enabled through the token and the hype around the token, which is all justified. But you don't have like Salesforce doesn't have like a community that's like buzzing on Telegram about like, oh, the new deals that they're making. And like, you don't have that. Maybe you have some consumer companies, like B2C companies, like maybe Apple has a pretty strong community and things like that, because they're the ones that the product is being delivered to. But when you have a business to business company like Quant, it's not typical to have a community that is buzzing and is demanding, frankly, feedback and updates and roadmaps. And then on top of that, they are white label in that most of the stuff that they're doing is under NDA and can't be talked about. So when you're dealing with a group of individuals like Gilbert, who run the company and are very, very professional and are at the highest tiers, quite literally, of society and of the economic system, they're not necessarily in a rush to come to us and say, oh, here's what we're doing every day. Like, here's the update, guys. It's like, I mean, okay, to play devil's advocate to that, you could say, well, they, needed us in the beginning, like when they did their ICO and Gilbert was in the Telegram more. And it's like, yeah, they did. And anyone who got in then, you've been handsomely rewarded. You have 100x plus gains even today. And so you got, that's fine. And now they're a growing company, and they've reached a certain point of their maturity where they're extremely focused on enterprise. And are they building out the gateways and the community side of things? Surely they are. But is it their number one priority in order to eventually create the ecosystem that we all want and that will eventually, move our token price? Yeah, I think they're doing all the right things. They're obviously more invested than we are. And so they're doing what they need to do to grow the company and thus grow the network and thus grow the token. So it really does have this air of like, not just like a lack of education around the company and their goals, but also this sense of entitlement that you think that because you have access to a token, which by the way is a privilege, and we are lucky to have the opportunity, in my opinion, to be able to invest in this way directly into the utility of a company. Like, it's not like we're just like, oh, I'm going to buy the stock because I think the psychology of the net, like people are going to see the revenue report and it's going to go up and the stock's going to go up. It's still very much tied to psychology. We are lucky enough to have access to the actual utility of the network, such that if the company succeeds, we succeed, period, point blank. So the entitlement comes in when it's like, oh, I bought my token. Not only do I not look at it as an opportunity, I'm going to look at it as like, now I'm owed something. I'm owed something by you. Make me my millions faster, Gilbert, and actually give me more updates on what you've been up to because I bought a token. So you like, it will come out as it comes out. And it's not like it's been radio silence. That would be one argument, would be like, we literally don't know anything that's going on with this company in 6 months. Like, what the hell? That's not the case. They're coming out with updates every week, every 2 weeks. They're posting on Twitter more than ever. They're going on panels that are nationally and internationally syndicated. They are pushing out updates to their technology every 2 weeks. They're like partnerships, or we're all doing speculation around certain partnerships that seem to be evident. I mean, guys, be patient. We're early, and that's what offers you the most opportunity, is being early, but it also requires patience. So if you find yourself getting frustrated, and it's not that we don't get frustrated, but it's like you have to zoom out. You have to zoom out, and you have to understand what you're invested in.
By the time we have all the answers to the list, even just the list of questions you received for this event today, I am fairly confident QNT is going to be a 4-digit token. I mean, we can say it over and over and over again, and you either, at this point, if you've been in the community, you agree with me, and if you haven't been to the community, I'm actually kind of surprised that you're still listening. Thank you very much. We're excited to have you here. Please join our Telegram groups. They're one of the best ways to learn more about Quant and interact. But looking ahead, there's 2 more questions that I want to cover, then I'm going to open it up for questions to the group here. We had a question that was around Whitelabels, and it came in a couple different ways. We had a question around just the team's perspective on whitelabeling, like have they discussed that? The answer is yes. And some questions around like how many private instances of Overledger, or how many like white labeled instances might there be, as well as like how does that then translate to the QNT token? So I'll cover this really quickly before I open it up. But what a white label means is a company would be able to use Quant or use one of Quant's services in their technology product, and they don't have to talk about it. And it's generally intentional for strategy, and it's generally under some type of like an NDA. And the idea behind this is that a company can take this underlying technology and they can build off of it, and they can launch it as their own product. They can brand it and say, hey, you know, I'm Amazon, and this is my AWS cloud blockchain product, or whatever. And they can take the branding credit, they can have all the network effects that come from growing that ecosystem, but at a base layer, it's all powered, or at least when you're operating through it, it's all going through Overledger, Quant product, and ultimately the QNT token. So the strategy behind white labeling is brilliant, because it allows you to quietly work within some of these massive tech organizations and offer them a way to create a new product and solution and take that to market before their competitors in silence. I mean, do you realize the competitive advantage that Oracle now has over a company like a comparable tech company that's not utilizing Overledger? It's enough to upset the complete corporate landscape, bringing these solutions first to market. So how many white label solutions might there be? I mean, there's no way that we will ever know the answer to this question beyond in the future being able to reverse engineer some data off of on-chain analytics. And that's okay. That's the way it's designed. You aren't going to find out from Apple what type of new technology they're researching for, like this new chip, years before they bring it to market, because why would they share their competitive edge? Why would they share their internal strategy, their secret sauce that allows them to do things that their competitors can't do? And just in the same, why would Quant want to risk risk that first mover advantage by going public when they don't have to? So by scaling in this stealth mode, where they've been for years and years now working with some of the largest entities across the world, from regulatory bodies to financial services to entire governments and central banks. I mean, Quant, it sounds a bit silly to say, but Quant is virtually connected the entire world in one way or another. When you really step back and you look at all of the first and secondary connections we have, I mean, it's truly, truly incredible stuff. And really, even just a fraction of what we know in future state is probably enough to have a life-changing impact on every single person here right now. Like I confidently believe that we are underestimating the best case scenario here, like without a doubt. So over ledger, and then is the QNT token used in a white label solution? So yes, as previously mentioned, clients and users of Quant's technology don't have to interact with crypto. In fact, if you look at how it's all being designed, from the developer language to the universal abstract technology nature to just the function of the treasury itself, it is all designed and optimized for the existing world first. Quant's technology is designed for people that don't know anything about crypto to use it. It's kind of like the WordPress introduction for blockchain, but also rolled into one suite of services and products that is regulatory and tax compliant and AML compliant. It's pretty crazy how big this actually gets. But yes, it all does flow through the QNT token. And just like when you went to go, let's say I want to go get the newest version of Microsoft Word, I just buy a license and I download the program. It's the same thing. Consumer's going to pay with their credit, debit card, whatever, and there you have your transaction to the back, and it's all automated, it's all programmed, and ultimately it'll all be visible on chain too. So, any questions on white labels?
Do you have to apply for a white label, or can any MDApp developer use that product?
So as in like the process of just having it be under the radar and not being publicly discussed?
Right, like if I created an MDApp and I didn't necessarily want to brand, to give Quant the recognition.
Well, I can only speculate on this, but I would assume that is just part of the discussion that Quant has between the people that are offered their services and the people that are using them. There's some type of also like contractual obligation from Quant where they say you can't talk about a certain thing until X date or whatever. It might go both ways, but I don't really have a whole lot of insight into that, as I don't work for Quant.
I would imagine, so the idea of a white label is a benefit to the client, right? Because you can just take ownership of the technology essentially, and you're licensing it from Quant, but you're saying, I built this. So the reason you would do that is because you want to, like, let's say, offer some sort of multi-blockchain service or product to your clients. And in that respect, I would definitely imagine that this is a type of license that Quant offers. So if you were to get some sort of license, you can't just claim it as your own without actually paying for that opportunity. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it wouldn't make much sense to me for Quant to just say, hey, come use us for like the minimum rate and then like offer us out without us being compensated in any way. That wouldn't make a ton of sense to me, but again, like, we are speculating here. We could probably find that out. Like, if you're an enterprise and you approach Quant and do some sort of some walkthrough with their team or something like that, that might actually be an interesting exercise. But there is a bit of still opacity to or opaqueness to kind of how they operate on the enterprise side. As Hungarian mentioned, with regards to working in stealth mode for as long as possible in order to protect, I believe, the market and their approach.
And just so you know that we aren't making this up. We're not, we have something to work off of here. Gilbert has talked loosely about this strategy before, talking about I think it's in specific, it was the LCX interview from May, I believe, of 2021. He was asked about the Whitelabels, and he essentially explains that that's how it's intentionally designed. Quant is designed to be the base layer of technology that anybody can take and build their new product on. It's like it's the sandbox for Web3, really. And they don't need or really even want anyone to know what's happening under the surface, because it's about allowing other people to build. It's about fostering an environment that facilitates innovation. And that's evident through all of their behavior. If you look at the creation of the global ISO standards, if you look at all of the different committees that Gilbert and team is involved with, if you look at how much work they're doing to enable and empower people across the world. I mean, look at the developer course they just, for free, by the way, they released a course to help all of the world's developers learn how to use Overledger. And it also goes into some blockchain stuff too. I mean, the actions and the communication align.
Hungarian, I mean, when you talk about like the base layer of everything, I think that like we should talk about ODAP a little bit, because I think it could be possibly misconstrued in the sense that like, why would and how could a private company like Quant actually be the base layer for the internet? Because that's not actually the case, right? And it wouldn't actually make sense for that to happen, and nobody would actually want that. So do you think we should talk about ODAP a little bit? Because there is a layer deeper than Quant, and kind of the distinction between ODAP and Overledger, I think, is something that's really important.
You read my mind, man. In fact, if you want to take that away, and at some point, the couple questions on here, and actually it's pretty relevant, questions around competition. And I think that's where ODAP will come in too. So the one question around CCIP in relation to ODAP, what does that mean? How do they contrast? Are they competitors? Why or why not? And then differentiation of Quant from different types of interoperability solutions, and particularly how that would pertain to the development of the ODAP standard.
Yes, so I'm going to leave the competition question just to the side for a moment, but just I pinned a tweet to a thread that I did on ODAP, which if you're interested in this conversation, I think it's pretty vital that you start to wrap your head around what ODAP is, because, like I said, we're not going to have a private company that is the base infrastructure for the internet, because that doesn't make any sense. And Overledger is a product that will run on the new internet, and it's the first product that is compliant with the new internet protocol. That new internet protocol is ODAP, and it hasn't been officially declared as such because it's still in drafting phase and being published through the IETF. So the IETF is the Internet Engineering Task Force. This is a group of individuals who they were the ones that basically pushed through TCP/IP, and they manage HTTP, the protocol that runs your browser, and SMTP, which is email protocol. And all of these protocols have to be spelled out, every little fine detail about how they work and how they resolve issues and what happens if they go down and all these things, and exactly all the technical stuff. These are all published to the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force. And MIT were the ones that worked with them on TCP/IP in order to help packets move around the internet and things of this nature, the way that we have the internet now, the Internet of Information, where you can move around pictures and text and videos and all the fun stuff that we do. Now, in order to move around digital assets that actually hold economic value, like cryptos, you're going to need an upgraded, secure cryptographic protocol that actually enables the move of these assets and can interoperate with the internet as it is now. So it's It's basically blockchain. When people think about, oh, blockchain is the new layer to the internet, it's like this is really what they're talking about, is something like ODAP, which is the Open Digital Asset Protocol, which is being written and published through Quant Network, MIT, Intel, IBM, US government, and tons of other companies that are working on it, contributing to it, telecoms companies, financial institutions that are working through the IETF. They've now been publishing drafts for about a year and a half. There's 5 different drafts that they're working on that address different things across gateways and ODAP itself, and there's a bunch of different drafts, and they're making progress. It's still going to take another year or two, according to Thomas Arjano, who is the chief technology officer at MIT Connection Science, who's working directly with Quant Network. And they were just on a panel the other day together on the Financial Times Crypto Summit. So this is a really important protocol because what it does is it essentially, instead of having a third party to interoperate systems like we do now, whether that is a centralized body like a Coinbase, like if I want to put my Bitcoin and make it into Ethereum, I can get onto an exchange and I can buy it and then sell the other one. And there you go. Now I have my new one, or I said it backwards. You sell what you have, you buy the other one. That acts as a form of interoperability in that sense, right? But you can also maybe use a bridge. You can use Wormhole, or you can use the Binance bridge, or you can use some other protocol that will lock up my tokens on one side and mint them on the other. And it enables me to like have value on one chain and then start using that value in a sense on the other chain. But you're still relying on a middleman, even though it's slightly more decentralized and there's not like humans that are running it. It's a smart contract. It's still a middleware. And that still creates vulnerability, right? And if you start to scale that up and every system and every network needs to like have a middleman, it's going to get really messy, and there's a cascading effect if one or two of those links start to get broken or hacked or anything like that. And we've seen, our countless share of hacks, especially over the last year. And so what ODAP is proposing is the use of API gateways, which essentially take any network and it dumbs the network down into the simplest form, which is bytes and bits. It's the simplest form of code. And so now you have a common language across all networks. And now you have this protocol that it says, hey, I have this data. I can do this with it, whatever it's programmed on my side through my gateway. So I'll take my network 1, my blockchain 1, and I'll put a gateway 1 in front of it. And you have blockchain 2 or network 2, and you have gateway 2 in front of it. And now gateway 1 and 2 are able to speak to each other without having to know what's behind it, without having to know what's on the blockchain or how that consensus mechanism works or anything about that network. It can just communicate gateway to gateway. And there's no middleman involved. It's just a common protocol. And that's the base layer. That is an open standard for anybody to come in and to, through the use of an API gateway, can now plug into this network of networks and connect their network in and start to move data around in a free way. And what Quant has done is, on top of helping build out this protocol, they are building Overledger, which is the first example and first ODAP compliant gateway provider. Okay, so in order to access this quote unquote new internet, this upgraded digital asset flowing internet, Overledger provides software that can do just that and plug in. And not only can you plug in this, and there will be other people, right? There will be other networks, especially once ODAP gets officially published. Like once the Internet Engineering Task Force publishes ODAP and says, okay, this is the Open Digital Asset Protocol. These are the standards by which all digital assets will be flowing across the internet. This is a new foundational protocol for the internet itself. And again, the same people that put out the protocols that we use now are building this. So this is very significant. Once this is published, then you're going, what do you think Google's going to do? Do you think they're going to be like, nah? Or do you think they're going to use the Internet Engineering Task Force protocol? What do you think Amazon's going to do? What do you think Microsoft's going to do? This is the new standard. And then all of a sudden, so they may, maybe they build their own gateways and gateway services for people to plug into this new internet. And that's all well and good. There will be competition in that sense. But Quant, not only are they the first to market, and building in a compliant and regulatory fashion. And again, ODAP is all going through ISO TC 307 and kind of complying with the standards that are already in place and are being worked on. Not only are they already all set up with that, but they are also patent pending in terms of their different products that are ODAP compliant. So for instance, these multi-ledger smart contracts. So they are applying across the world for these patents that are already being examined. And basically what they are, for instance, the one is an ordering and filtering layer is what they're patenting. So this idea, we talked about this multi-DLT lightning network, where you have this layer 2 that lives above all blockchains and distributed ledgers. And basically what it does is when you say ordering and filtering, you're basically taking transactions from across all these different networks through your one app, right? I have my one app that speaks to all these different networks. And that transaction happened here, and it happened here, and it happened here, and it's all in one ledger, essentially. And the way that orders and filters, that technology is being patented. So while the Amazons or the Googles or whoever can build ways to access this new internet and to retrieve and find and offer data, they're not going to be able to, unless they find a way around the patent, be able to offer multi-ledger smart contract creation. And so that's pretty big, because they'll have the interoperability of allowing, being able to speak to different networks, but they won't be able to build or offer the building of robust multi-DLT smart contracts without the use of Overledger. So it's a really important distinction. There's another patent that they've applied for the multi-ledger tokens, which we already talked about, where QRC20 is an example of that. The central bank digital currencies are going to be examples of multi-ledger tokens. So not only can you have the smart contracts that can read from across these different blockchains and all settle in a single smart contract, but you'll also have these tokens that can live across multiple blockchains at the same time. And then all the transactions, if I spend it on Solana and I also spend it on Corda, and then someone else spends it on Bitcoin, then it's all settling in one specific ledger back in Overledger. So that's also being patented as well. So the multi-ledger tokens and the multi-ledger contracts. So there's the layering, if you think about it, right? So you have ODAP is this common protocol for all digital asset transfer that's being standardized by the IETF. Then you have the way it works is through API gateways. That's how you plug in. Quant and Overledger are developing an API gateway service that anyone can come up with, but they are now patenting the specifics and the layer above that, which is like these multi-ledger capabilities across tokens and contracts through their API gateway service. So I know that's a lot, but I just think that ODAP is really ultimately the thing that will break this wide open once people start to realize the power and the necessity for API gateways. API gateways, as outlined in the thread at the top, can also be used within bridging systems to provide resiliency and security. So it's not to say that bridges have no use. There is going to be value in having like private bridges or just like, I just want network to network, like more robust infrastructure for this to this, and be able to tinker and tweak it and make it, specific for our business or our application. That still be there. But ultimately it needs to go through an API gateway at the end in order to provide the standardization of the endpoints. And so, ODAP is kind of the thing that is the biggest deal as far as I'm concerned. And then Overledger is a private product on top of this incoming standard across the entire internet.
I just want to rewind and play that over again, because that was one of the best descriptions of ODAP and how Quant and API gateways fit into that into the whole infrastructure. So Greg, thank you for explaining that. That was absolutely fantastic. I just want to highlight one key thing here, because I'm not coming at this from a technical background. I'm not from tech at all. Blockchain and computer science is something that I've had to learn over the last couple of years. So excuse my extrapolations and analogies and my lack of comprehension of different subjects. But something that stands out to me a lot when we talk about these types of things is like the history. So I'm not an internet engineer. I'm not a software designer. I couldn't tell you how the code works, and I couldn't look at the raw code and tell you the difference between the two. Like, I can't. But what I can tell you is that when I see something like the same people that made the very infrastructure of the internet today, working with Quant and working with all of the same entities that basically define our modern landscape. You don't have to be a technology expert to understand that. You don't have to understand how to code in blockchain. You don't have to be a Solidity developer to recognize that when you see the same people who made the internet protocols of today that power the internet for billions of people, those same people are working with Quant. They're working with institutions across the world. They're working with some of the largest cybersecurity and telecom and payment companies in the world. The fact that they've been doing this and that we see consensus now coming through. So we see, like I'll reference a paper from Hyperledger where they talk about different solutions for interoperability. And ultimately, the API gateway is the best approach to interoperability. And Overledger represents the preeminent solution in that category. So Overledger is the best API gateway interoperability solution, and API gateways is the best way to interoperate. So now that we have this global standard for how the internet is coming together, ODAP, it's important to recognize the reference material for ODAP is the architecture for Overledger. I'm going to say that again. The reference material for the global internet standard for how we're going to connect value and transact with each other, the reference material is the architecture for Overledger. Now, I'm not a software engineer, but that speaks volumes to me. So looking at the time, we're coming up on 2.5 hours now. Absolutely tremendous amount of time. I thank all of you for sticking with us this long, but I want to make sure that we get enough time to still cover a few more community questions. I know that there have been people who have been waiting patiently, and if we don't get a chance to answer your questions today, I'll certainly make sure that we do events like this in the future. I have a lot of fun talking about Quant. I think that a lot of people enjoy hearing about Quant, so if this is something you'd like to see more of, make sure that you let us know. But opening it up now just to general questions for the community. Let's start off with Ayush.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. I have so many doubts about this space and all this NFT and all these things. Today, I must say that you made my all the query so easy. Thank you so much. But I have a one question, man. I'm so confused with my pictures that this pictures work on NFT or not. That should I put this pictures or not? Uh, Please allow me to share my few pictures. I'm from India. I'm a photographer. I'm capturing my country from last 5 or 6 years, and I have some bunch of collection of photographs, emotions, feeling, some culture. So please allow me to share
Hey
a few
man, are you
photographs with
showing
you.
your NFT project? I want to hear about Quant.
Yeah, Ayush, did you have a question about Quant? Or, I mean, we're not going to really do the sharing other projects thing on this stage, if that's cool. Did you have a Quant specific question?
I had a quick question. Thank you for letting me talk. Can you explain the difference, and I know there is one, between Quant and Interledger Protocol? Quant sounds a lot broader, but can you give me a kind of a beginner's explanation of the difference between these two things? Thank you.
I'm going to have to pass on that one. I know Interledger is a Ripple based thing, but I actually have not, again, we don't have any engineers on this stage right now, unfortunately.
I don't think that Interledger has anything has anything to do with this project at all. I don't know why it's even been brought up.
With Quant, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, people like to do comparisons, so I can understand why.
That's completely different. It's a smart contracts thing. It's not even that good. And oh god, who wants to get into it? It has nothing to do with this project. There's no comparison. There's like just similar names in like some type of documentation.
Do you have any insight specifically onto Interledger or how they compare other than just it's bad, so we can help educate?
I'm kind of confused. You're asking me to explain why there's no comparison?
Yeah, well, you chimed in pretty aggressively there, so I was hoping you could maybe provide some more color on Interledger.
Well, I think the conversation just be focused on Quant, should it?
Yeah, it could be, but also I'm co-hosting it, so if you wanted to come in with that energy, I'm just asking if you want to educate or just interrupt. Otherwise, we can move along.
Well, I'll just say this. Interledger, for the most part, it just allows, it's just a communication system. It's nothing to do with the internet, creating the uniform version of the internet. I don't really, I'm sorry, man. I'm not trying to interrupt. I just don't really think that it's relevant.
I understand where you're
Jimmy,
coming
did
from.
you have a question about Quant?
No, I'm just here to defend Quant from the people who are trying to take away the spotlight.
I would say, because there's obviously a lot of different opinions here, and with crypto we see a really unique dynamic because of the personal interest we can have, the personal financial gain. We see this, like, obviously very strong passion and agreement and alignment with our respective, whether it is a protocol or a token or a project. And when you see the larger ones, especially when they have even just ideas that are similar, when we come at it, because we don't necessarily know a whole lot about how the technology works, it's a very normal question to look at that and to try to understand how this might differentiate. I mean, I think that from an investment standpoint, not a tech standpoint, but from a capital preservation standpoint, all of us at some point throughout our journey into investing, our journey into cryptocurrency, we've likely doubted ourselves. We've likely taken steps to maybe check things that we're unsure about, or we've found ways to ensure that we're making the right decision, because there's going to be varying levels, but a lot of us have quite a lot on the line invested in what we believe in is the future of the internet. So when we look at comparing something like ILP to like Overledger or Overledger Network, as I'm not a technical expert here, I can't really tell you on the specifics offhand. I would actually have to reference material. There's quite a lot of things. So if you want to connect with me I don't remember who asked this question, but if you want to connect with me offline, I can send you some stuff via DM. But there are fundamental architectural differences in how they operate and in what their use cases are. And ultimately what Quant and Overledger is solving is something it's at such a high level that it's not seen anywhere else in crypto. So even you see some projects out there that are looking at doing routing protocols. You see, some out there that are looking at different types of ideas for new standards and things. But the level that Quant is operating at is at a global stage. So it really, it doesn't matter too much, because even as competition inevitably arises and you see use cases and things develop in different areas, the total addressable market and potential for value accrual through the QNT token is more than we can possibly comprehend. I mean, some of the smartest people in this space expect the blockchain internet, the internet of value, to be valued over tenfold that of the current internet. And for rough figures, again, I don't have it on hand, but I believe it's 10 trillion to 150 trillion or something around that, just these massive, truly enormous numbers. So when we look at the relative market share, Quant holds I think it's 0.01% or something. I wrote an article on this a while back, but it's Quant already has a fairly small portion of the total value that is just in the crypto space itself. If you look at what is expected to happen into the total crypto space, the total Web3, the future of the internet of value, however you want to look at it, this space is expected to grow hundreds and hundreds of times in multiples. So even if Quant maintains its current market share of the crypto universe, which, keep in mind, we know there's a lot of noise in crypto. There's a lot of value that is not stable, that is probably not going to be there in the future. So even if Quant maintains its current very small portion, again, 0.01% or whatever of the market share, even if we maintain that, it is a 5-digit token at some of the conservative expectations for IoT, IOV value in the 5 to 10 year range. And that's not even like factoring in all the growth and network effects of the actual technology. And I think it reads a lot here, these isolated pockets of value that happen because of innovation. We have not really even begun to see the translation of value into the QNT token, nor have we begun to see the standardized perspective of efficacy, I guess, in technology. Like the fact that we can't even explain to each other why these things are that different without going into extensive research material or without having someone who's an expert. I mean, that really tells you where we're at right now. So yeah, if we do the time and we do the research like we've done, we can get to those answers, and that's what we have our thoughts, our feelings, our conviction, and our conclusions. But ultimately, this space has so much opportunity, and quant position the way they are as a first mover, it doesn't really matter what other protocols are successful, what other projects end up going. Like, there's going to be a lot of ways to make money in crypto, and there's going to be a lot of companies that end up coming out of this that influence the global landscape, and that's awesome. Quant needs all of that. In fact, without that, you could argue quant doesn't have any value. The way that quant fails is by nothing else being built. So
I've read about quant. I've read about obviously XRP, interletter, blah blah blah. It's so early. I appreciate your answer. It was purely a technical, not trying to. I love what Overledger is doing. I've read a little bit about it. I've listened to Gilbert. Wow, it's fascinating. My question was primarily from a technical standpoint. I'm going to go back and read more. But thank you so much for that. I've also invested in both projects. I think I'm not shilling anything, but I think this is a phenomenal project. Anyway, thank you for the answer. Appreciate it.
Yeah, if I can respond really briefly on the technical side, I'm also not an engineer by any stretch. But to me, it always begins and ends with what is it created to do? And if you look at XRP, again, I am not very well read up on Interledger protocol, but it's quote unquote another network, another blockchain, another DLT, same as a lot of other L1s, Ethereum, Polkadot, and the rest of them. And what always happens with those networks is that there is always a degree of a degree of vendor lock-in, and there is always a degree of a bottleneck or limitations eventually. And what Quant tries to do with Overledger is kind of like Twitter Spaces here. All the speakers here have their own perspective, their own specialties, their own things they like to talk about, or they're very proficient at, and Twitter Spaces makes us all shine, makes us all better. It lets us all communicate together, and maybe you can try and see Overledger as being that, and obviously a lot more, and just like Hungarian said earlier, Overledger and Quant on its own is kind of useless, because same as ODAP, Quant in itself isn't all that much. We need the MDAPs in the future to work the magic, so to speak. So we're gonna need the little bits of ILP, and we're gonna need the little bits of Solana, and we're gonna need a little bit of Bitcoin and a little bit of other fairy dust and whatnot. Maybe throw in a little NFT thing, then stir it all up, create a dashing MDAP, and improve the world that way. That's why Gilbert once said, and I think the quote is in Maine, that he is like really interested in what we are going to build. He is going to provide us with the infrastructure to build on, with the tools, and he needs us, communities, and the other projects to use our imagination and build what we need. He's not going to think for us. So in comparison with ILP, they provide a very specific product for a very specific market, and in my mind, that is finance, and it's a DLT or blockchain. I'm not even sure about that. Blockchain is DLT, but I hope that kind of answers your question. So they have totally different goals, different use cases, and they'll obviously both exist, and they will have overlap, perhaps. But Overledger is so much more, for so much more. Thank you.
Hi, going off what you said there, I kind of think that the main point is that ILP is really targeting just the financial sector, and that Quant targets other verticals. And so my question is, how does the Quant token, how is that involved in other verticals other than finance? Like, I need someone to help me connect the dots where, say, a supply chain company has, used Corda to build out their, blockchain-based systems, their infrastructure. How does Quant manage their data in a way that is good for the Quant token, if that makes sense?
Honestly, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because, Quant itself isn't really managing the data. It's like a foundational layer. It's helping coordinate the data, but the token is not really connected to it. The success of the project is based on people utilizing the token. It's true, but I don't think it's fair to say that by managing so-called data, which I'm guessing you refer to block space, that somehow, because it's not really a question of its block space, it's a question of other projects' block space, right?
Right. Like, I can be more specific. How does
What?
Quant, how does Quant create interoperability for non-finance sectors?
Well, you have to have a third-party API to connect it.
I can probably. I'm not as technical as some people on this call, but one thing I am decent at is distilling it down pretty simply. Look, Quant, it's not managing data for anyone. What it's doing is allowing people to connect their data
It's
in ways
basically just like Plaid, but for Web3.
Yeah, they're allowing them to connect their data in ways they haven't before. So maybe you're a supply chain company. Let's say you're UPS and you're using this new supply chain DLT. Maybe you're using Morpheus Network or you're using VET or whatever. Before, maybe you didn't trust selling some of that data to third parties. Maybe hedge funds want that data so they can trade on it. Maybe some of your retailers want more access to data than you're currently giving them. But one, you have to be able to do that in a trustful manner, and you want to make money on it. And so Quant allows you to connect that data to these other, let's say, platforms, whether that's, the hedge fund desk at Goldman Sachs and whatever software they're using, or it's, the software at some retailer. That's the value that Quant creates, is that connection and the ability to manipulate the data in a way that it can be accepted readily and easily with no bottleneck by these other systems. So how does the token come into play? The token is literally the gas that's used to facilitate that connection. Okay, and so that's really what Quant does. What Interledger is trying to do is, like these other platforms, as other people alluded to, it's building an island and an ecosystem that can solve a lot of problems, but you have to be in that ecosystem. What Quant is trying to do is connect all these disparate ecosystems, whether it's Oracle software, Microsoft software, it's the existing internet, it's new, Web3 platforms like Polkadot or any of them, Solana, Ethereum, Bitcoin even. It allows you to connect these systems. And so the value of the Quant platform is in the connection itself. And why the token has so much potential to appreciate is because you're going to need to use the token to pay for that connection. And it's, from what I understand, the last time they told us, it's going to be a kind of pay as you go. You're going to need the token every time you hit a connection. Now, we're still waiting for more details from the company if there's going to be, at the Oracle and SIA level, are they going to pay a ton of money and get unlimited use for that annual contract? Maybe. Or maybe governments do something like that. But individual software developers, individuals like us, more often than not, are probably going to have to pay per use of that overledger network. And so to me, that's the value of the token, is that as the demand to connect all these systems and use data, like in that example I gave, in different ways and bring value to existing data in ways that hasn't been unlocked, as that demand for that type of ability grows, the demand for the token naturally grows as well. And oh, by the way, people are going to be staking their tokens so that they can have bigger throughput in their gateways that they run, which will be, effectively the nodes of facilitation of the network. And so there's this virtuous cycle where if you're a quant holder and you're running a gateway and you are rewarded in quant for running that gateway, if you decide to take that quant token you received as a reward and put it back into the gateway, you have more bandwidth to facilitate all these connections. So that's a lot. I kind of went down the rabbit hole, but think of XRP, great. It's targeting finance. It's changing its structure dramatically. I don't pretend to be up to date on it, but what I'll tell you is they're going after bank remittances and international FX. They're trying to be a liquidity provider, which is not something Quant does. There's a reason why XRP and Quant are both in the Digital Pound Foundation, because they're actually technologies that work hand in hand and are not necessarily competing, even though maybe some of their scope overlaps here and there. So hopefully that helped, guys.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I want to add on something that you. I want to add on something that you just said regarding the quant tokenomics. You described the quant token as being the gas. I think that's selling it a little bit short, and I'm not going to want to go through all the tokenomics again, because we've done that at the beginning of this Twitter Spaces. If people want to know more about that, I'd highly recommend after we're done to re-listen to this. There's a lot of juice. It's kind of redundant to do that, to repeat that again. What is important to remember is that everything that the token does and needs to get paid for is paid for in fiat. And that's what distinguishes Quant from the vast majority of all other projects, because the client does not have to own any tokens if they don't want to. And it's been said before, but it got skipped by pretty quickly. But everybody needs to pay in fiat, and that means that all the fees and all the costs and all those things are denominated in fiat. That means that regardless if the price goes up or down of the token, fiat rates remain the same, which is really interesting, because that means that the lower the QNT price, then the more QNT is needed for the same transaction as when the price is higher, if that makes sense. So that also means that lockups will require more tokens if the price is lower, etc. So there's always an equilibrium where there's it's not really equilibrium, it's really deflationary, where there is more tokens needed the longer the network operates. I wanted to nuance on that a little bit. Thanks.
That's a great point, and I think it's often overlooked. And if people, the simplest way to explain it is with Ethereum and the gas fee problem. Why is Ethereum so expensive? It's because they don't have this treasury mechanism where fees are paid in fiat, like you associated, and it creates a virtuous cycle. It's a self-correcting mechanism, as you said. When the token is cheaper, it takes more of the tokens to cover those costs of the demand. And even as ultimately the major bet on the token is that demand will continue to grow over time. And so it'll take, more and more tokens to cover a transaction, if you will, or a bigger percentage of a token to cover a transaction, to cover that demand. And we all know that the amount of QNT is fixed, right? And so that's the key. That's the dynamic that creates an incredibly virtuous cycle over a supply ramp, or excuse me, a demand ramp that if you look at Bitcoin adoption, you look at Web3 adoption, is going parabolic and is outpacing the internet.
Absolutely loving the discussion here, guys. Thank you so much to all of our community members that have jumped in to both ask questions and contribute. I truly appreciate every single one of you guys. We have, looking at the time, we've got about 10 minutes left here, and I want to make sure we get through as much as possible. So we're going to use these last few minutes to go through a couple more community questions. But again, keep in mind, I do plan on running similar events like this. I can see that you guys are enjoying the discussion. I know that I am, and I know that there's so much more that we can talk and share about with Quant. Knowing that we're moving into an environment in the coming weeks and months, we're going to have increasing clarity and visibility on some of these core ideas. It's going to be exciting to revisit some of these discussions with increased clarity and with new perspective on what this actually looks like. So knowing that we're closing out here in the last few minutes, just keep in mind, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us, but also stay tuned because this is not the end of the discussion. So opening up for a few more questions here. Any other questions from the community on Quant's QNT, Quant products in general?
Shall we first do Mark and then Paria, or Paria first?
Do you guys hear me?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So my question was, do these latest updates, like the connectors to the layer ones or any other changes to the like the version of the overledger, do you think they are like necessary or critical for the community gateways, not to just like for the company to make them, but like for them to be actually useful? And if the answer is yes, like are there any other changes you're looking forward to, so that at that point you think the community gateways are actually are a useful thing, if that makes sense?
Well, there's two ways to look at this, because we have the development of Quant and the products as they relate to the crypto space and the crypto sphere. And then we have the development and the rollout of products as they relate to the larger world and the internet and DLT. So it's really easy for us, being involved in this crypto space to look at the crypto facing steps, to look at, gateways, to look at dashboards, to look at, public instances of Overledger network and get really excited about that. And rightfully so. We should be excited about those things. Though I think that something that often goes overlooked is that the products and services that are going to roll out from all of the enterprise partners are going to dwarf that of what comes out of the crypto space. I mean, and you think about how all of this works. You look at, like, we'll take Oracle as an example. We have a lot of visibility here, so it's easy to reference. We look at Oracle. They have 430,000 companies that are using their products and services. And as these different products and services across virtually every industry in the world, as they create value in applications and they take their ideas and influence from their industry, and that applies to DLT and beyond, as they create these services, those services and products and MDAPs, they become extensions on the OVN. They become things that other people can access too. So personally, what I'm very excited about is to see the rollout of public and retail facing tools from some of the larger partners. I want to see the entire suite of crypto products that Oracle comes out with that allow plug and play building for, any type of company. Like, I want to see Oracle come out with basically Shopify for blockchain. Like, that's the kind of stuff that's going to come out. And then by extension, we see these network effects that we talked about ripple through and create increasing scarcity and demand for the QNT token, among all of the other ways that we've talked about that being a vehicle for price appreciation. So personally, that's what I'm excited about, because I know that the scale, the magnitude and exposure, and ultimately the amount of users that are going to go into these types of products will be probably 100-fold that of the users and volume that crypto products see today.
So I'm sorry, thank you for the answer, but like what I was saying, so when the gateways were like maybe supposed to, or I'm not saying they promised or anything, but when we were thought that they're going to be released earlier, maybe the network wasn't even ready at that point. So I'm saying maybe there are big changes that are coming that after that the community gateways are going to be actually useful for the whole network. So the connectors maybe are part of that.
Yeah. What would be the point of releasing access to a public network if there's less connected to it? And, you know, right now we're seeing these connectors roll out basically bi-weekly. And we can only, we can only guess about what's happening in the background. But I don't have a clear answer. None of us do, because we're not internal employees. But yeah, it would make sense that if the product isn't out yet, then it's either not ready or it's not necessary, kind of in line with that larger strategic vision. Like, they're going to do what's best for the organization and the growth of the network. And if that means gateways don't come out now, then sure, cool. Like, do you guys want Quant to be a global name in the tech world, and to ultimately then see that recognition and appreciation over the long term? Or would you rather they make reactionary, emotional, short-term moves to do things that don't necessarily impact the broader strategy? I mean, I know which one I'm picking. We had one more question, I believe.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Thanks for putting this together. I just wanted to, I'm glad we looped back around to where we did, but I wanted to touch on the Interledger Protocol versus Quant Network. And I think that by looking at that, asking that question, we're kind of missing it, right? And that Interledger Protocol sucks or whatever, but it's actually a phenomenal technology. So is Ethereum, Polygon, all the things that Quant's connecting to, because Quant is the key to unlocking the value of all those other networks, and that's why they chose them to utilize. So we're going to be able to take the best out of Ethereum, the security of Bitcoin, the speed of Interledger Protocol, and make these MDApps that really unlock the value that collectively they couldn't make on their own. You know what I'm saying? So it's greater than the sum of the parts. So Overledger not being not a network, it's not a blockchain, right? If I were one bank connecting to another bank, sure, you can have one corridor between Singapore and Mexico for remittances for that's on Interledger Protocol, or utilizing that one piece of Interledger's protocol strength, combined it with security and other factors, kind of almost solving the trilemma to connect any network to any network and bring the best value out of all of the ecosystems. And that's what's going to be appealing to each individual sector: healthcare, finance, all these other things. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
All right, guys, I think we have time for one more question. Who's it going to be?
Nobody? In that case,
well, I'm gonna.
Hello everyone. I don't have any question. I just want to say, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate the effort, everything what you do, not only for the crypto space, but also for the whole community, and I would even say for the whole world, because definitely what I see you to provide and do into the longevity, you are one of the main key contributors to make the planet really difference. So I'm really looking, and excited to be, part of the team, aka part of the community, because I have been for the first time here. So I really appreciate your time, really appreciate your effort, and looking forward to lean more towards to that. Thanks very much for that.
Well, you're very welcome. I think that I speak for everyone when I say that we're all here because we love Quant and we want to share it with everyone else. And of course, it's easy to look at the internal and personal financial metrics, like, oh, we want more people to be involved in the Quant community. And yeah, of course, that's very natural, but it's so much more than that. It really is. And I hope that you guys recognize the authenticity and what we're trying to bring here. This isn't about shilling a token. This isn't about some type of maximalist perspective, my way or the highway. This is genuinely a group, again, like I said, 10 years of collective research on this stage. It's mind-boggling. This is a group of people that are truly excited about this technology. They're excited about what the future holds and how Quant is facilitating and ushering in this entirely new world of innovation. So while these topics, they don't always have a direct relation to QNT, or they don't have like super tangible impacts all the time on what that actually means. It's because all of us here are so excited about where the future of the internet is going. And Quant is undoubtedly going to be a core part of that. So thank you so much to all of our speakers. Thank you so much to all of our listeners. I'm incredibly grateful for every single person that was able to tune in, that was able to provide some value, and hopefully was able to receive some value in turn. This is something that I absolutely love doing. I could talk about Quant all day, any day. I do, and that's why I'm doing this. But I think that we'll probably put something together like this, and maybe look at it for like a monthly forum to get together as a community and have some discussions. I think that the more that we can talk and share ideas, the stronger they're going to be, and the stronger we are as a community, the more that we can help educate others, and the more that we can help grow Quant Network. Because yeah, you might not be a blockchain developer, and you might not be a software expert, but you are part of our community. And if you can help take these ideas that we really try to share at a core level, and you can share them in a way with other people that helps them understand. So not telling them, but helping them understand. By doing that, you play such a huge role in the growth of the Quant community, in the growth of the network of this social web, and ultimately the extension of crypto and development from there. Recognize, guys, that this is not something that we can sit passively by in. If you are passionate about Quant, if you are passionate about the future, that I would encourage all of you, continue learning, continue asking questions, become a part of our community, join the Telegram groups, ask questions. What you're a part of right now is one of the most exciting and special things you could possibly imagine. I mean, from an investment standpoint alone, the potential upside is something that it goes beyond a generational opportunity. This is like a once in a millennium opportunity. I know it sounds crazy, but the changes that are happening right now with what DLT offers, with what crypto can do, they are changing fundamental laws of human interaction that have been constant since the dawn of human history. Like since the first human to human interactions, there are rules that have interacted and shaped our society. And now, just within the last couple of years, technology has been created that allows all of that to change. And Quant has connected the ecosystem, the sandbox, the very fabric that brings this all together, that allows all of the imagination, all of the possibilities, all of the promises that innovation can bring. Quant is helping usher in this future. And all of us here in the community, we're on the forefront. And that's just an incredibly exciting place to be. So once again, I just want to thank all of you for tuning in, for contributing, for our speakers, and I look forward to doing more things like this in the future. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and most importantly, as always, stay Quamfy.
Hey, Hungarian, Greg, thanks for hosting this. Really appreciate it. Honored to be here. Love to speak and share with you guys, and I'm really looking forward to the next one. Cheers.
Yeah, just signing off, wanted to say thank you to Hungarian, who organized this, put together the agenda, and did a great job hosting. Guys, please follow the speakers. Hungarian is going to be running these rooms and does a great job. Next to me is the Quamfy Show, and Jarno, who both are co-hosts of the Quamfy Show, is really the only Quant podcast that there is, and they're available on all platforms, including YouTube with video. I was just on there yesterday, and it was a blast. And then I've been putting out threads on Twitter, pretty deep threads with regards to some of the fundamental analysis. So if you're interested in that, follow me. But yeah, just had a blast today, and thanks again, Hungarian, and look forward to do this again.
Yeah, I would also like to thank you a lot. This is the first time doing a Twitter space for me, so it was all new. I was afraid that I was touching the wrong buttons, but I actually managed to share some tweets in between and learn how it works. I didn't say a lot, but that is just because this was our third recording this week. I think it's kind of a bit of recording fatigue at this point. And you guys were just doing an amazing job, so I didn't have to moderate myself, what I usually do on the show. So yeah, that was great. And there were some questions that I couldn't answer. Some people on Instagram asking me questions. So yeah, I'll promise you that we'll get back to it on the next episode. So we'll get back to you guys. Thank you so much. And that was me for tonight. And we'll see you next week.
I'm gonna play one clip of Gilbert. It's like a 90-second clip just talking about Overledger, and then Hungarian, I believe as the host, you are the only one who can close down the room. So I'm just gonna let Gilbert take us out here.
Thank you all.
I like the idea of dApps, the decentralized applications. So what we wanted to do was take that concept and make it multi-DLT. So think of a payment application or an existing dApp that people are using in Defi to wrap it with Overledger. So you upgrade the capabilities of that dApp and you natively make it multi-DLT. You're able to have that dApp exist on Ethereum, on Ripple, on Bitcoin, on EOS, and also be linked to a quarter DLT that a bank is using internally. So we're bridging the permissionless world very easily. And if you take an existing financial institution that has millions of users, billions of dollars and pounds, without Overledger, they would have to go host nodes, they would have to create specific networks, different data center segments, and get custom stuff built just to be able to talk blockchain. So it's hugely complex, and it takes, minimum 8 months from our experience just to get a blockchain project up and running. And minimum it's going to cost a couple of £1 million. And then if you want to use more than one blockchain, then you have to repeat that same process for all your applications and all your systems. Just connect to our API and you can say, I want to use blockchain 1, 2, and 7, and all it's going to take is 3 lines of code. Stripe is a very good example that the payments infrastructure was hugely complex to run. And then Stripe came in and said, all you need to do is add 5 lines of code and you could use the Stripe API and then you can do payments. So we've taken a similar approach where we've just simplified the adoption for enterprise to use blockchain.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, comrades. Going to end the stream here. Thank you so much again for being here, for interacting. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm going to give my voice some rest after 3 recordings this week. Stay Quamfy.